Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen just won't take no for an answer. Am I the jerk for refusing when my friend wanted to join my fiance and I on our first trip together? I, 22 female, and my fiance, 23 male, are going on our first trip together. I'm really excited as this is my first time on a plane and even leaving the state that I've lived in my whole life. We've been planning this trip since earlier this year and we've gotten our tickets as well as all of our accommodations. Altogether, we've already spent about $4,500 on everything, which has been something we've been saving for as we're both college students. Our trip is in about a month, and in comes my friend. We'll call her Ashley, she's 22, who's been my friend for about a year. She had brought up going to Japan as well, kind of jokingly, when we told her about the trip. I didn't think she was serious, but then she brought it up a few more times, even saying that she had a family member she could stay with. She asked if she could spend some time during the days joining us on our adventures while this family member was at work. I was supportive of this idea, as I knew this would be her first time to Japan as well, and I care about her. However, all of a sudden, she told me she wanted to get the tickets, but her family member no longer would have space for her to stay. She wanted to know if she can stay in our accommodations and join us on our flight back home. I let her know that our accommodation has strict rules against having more than 2 people, and there's only one small bed in this studio. She said she'd be fine sleeping anywhere, on the couch or the floor, etc. I told her that I'd feel more comfortable if we didn't chance a fee or getting in trouble in general, as I really just want a comfortable stay. I told her that we're still willing to spend time with her during the day, and I began sending her accommodations in her budget. I was hoping this would be enough. Instead, she's just asking if we can cancel our accommodation and pay for a larger accommodation that can have a bed for her as well. Mind you, she's not saying she will help us pay for the more expensive accommodation or anything else for that matter. She simply just wants to stay with us and for us to pay for a different accommodation. It seems like no matter what I say, she just keeps trying to manipulate me into letting her stay with us. This is also hard because I know my fiance and I really wanted this to be a romantic trip for us both, as we likely won't be able to afford another one for a few years as we finish school. I'm just stuck on what to say or do, and if I'm the jerk here. Should I be okay with my friend staying with us and joining in on our trip? Update. As I'm reading the comments, there's a lot of people saying that I should be upfront about it being a romantic trip. When I first told her about the trip, I did tell her this is basically going to be our honeymoon. I may have said it jokingly to her, but I did mean it. My fiance and I have been talking about going to Japan since we got together like 8 years ago. I thought this honeymoon comment, as well as me bringing up activities like making our anniversary cake at a shop in Kyoto, clearly set the tone in which I planned this trip to be. I do agree that I should re-clarify that this is a romantic trip, but I feel uneasy that she'd receive this well, and she shut down all my logical reasons. I was hesitant when she brought up spending some time with us, but I thought maybe it was just something nice to do. I get that it's a romantic trip, but my fiance was fine with it and supported her coming along on some of the more normal things like going to Universal, since it was only going to be a few days of our trip, like 4 out of our 30+ days that we'll be there, that she would join us. She originally said she'd only be in Japan for a week and she'd only need to be with us while her family members were at work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. But now things have changed and she's saying it could be longer. I do have trouble with boundaries, and I always want to be the one helping people out when I can, which doesn't seem to work out for me, but I'm working on it. But as she has been pushing for the last few hours, no matter what I say, I've been getting more upset. I just didn't know if I was being selfish towards a friend in need. Now, I can definitely see that this was probably the plan all along, and she isn't in a tight spot. She just wants to use us. This realization does hurt, as I thought we had gotten really close in our shared major, but I guess she really doesn't care about my feelings like I care about hers, because ultimately, I just didn't want to hurt her feelings. She recently got dropped out of our major, so I thought she was just really sad and needed a pick-me-up. Update, 2 days later. I ended up refusing for the 10th time, but I told her no bluntly and as clearly as possible. As you guys have said, no was a complete sentence. I also made sure to say that I wasn't down with changing anything and that I want to spend time with my fiance alone. That I've been trying to nicely say no, but I don't appreciate getting manipulated nor having my partner and I's feelings ignored. She said, "We've been talking about this trip for so long. Why didn't we just work it out earlier? It's not my fault that this is last minute. Why won't you just do this one? It's not much different, but there's an extra bed." And she sent me a link to a specific accommodation, where the 2 beds are side by side, by the way. I'm so weirded out. She basically ignored what I said, so I have ignored her since. We're in the same friend group, so I think it's probably going to get weird, But honestly, I'm okay with that. Regardless of how that goes, my fiance and I will be going alone and not meeting up with her or anyone anywhere during our trip. This was so painful to read. OP needs to drop Ashley because there's no way in heck she's that clueless about this being a romantic trip. I wanted to shake her through the screen, not gonna lie. Am I the jerk for refusing to tattoo at my cousin's wedding? I'm a tattoo artist. I've done an apprenticeship the first year of tattooing. I work as a tattoo artist for 4 years now, and I opened a studio recently. Me and my family are invited to a wedding, and it's taking place in another state. My cousin is marrying, and we got the invitation a few months ago. Time has moved forward, and now the wedding is in a week already. Out of the blue, my cousin, let's call him Matt, texted me with something along the lines of, "You're gonna tattoo me on my wedding day." I was a bit confused, as I never even thought of bringing my equipment, since I also didn't plan for a guest spot or anything. A guest spot is a tattoo artist working at another studio for a few days or weeks, mostly in a different area to grow the clientele. I jokingly asked if he has a machine, as I still hoped that he wasn't serious. He then just asked if I don't have one, and that one machine wouldn't take up that much space to take with me. I replied that I didn't plan on bringing my equipment, that in fact contains more than just a machine. We have color and hygiene stuff, stencil, etc., and that I'm not prepared to tattoo at a wedding of which I don't know anything about. The layout of the location, is it inside, outside, and so on. He then said that he had planned on this and that it would mean a lot to him to both get a tattoo on his wedding day and that I'd be the one to tattoo him. Remember that this is the first time I'm hearing about this. I again tried to explain that I don't feel comfortable with that and that it's really short notice. He saw my messages, but he stopped replying. This morning, my mother called me and she was furious. She asked why I couldn't pull my crap together and just tattoo Matt. I told her what I've previously told Matt as well, but she didn't want to hear it. She just said it would mean a lot to her and Matt's family if I just do it and that it could be my wedding gift, then she hung up. I talked to my brother about it and he just shrugged it off and said, "It would be nice of you." I'm unsure what to do now. As I said, I'm not really comfortable with the whole situation, especially because I've never been guest spotting, so I never had to travel, let alone get on a plane with my equipment. But is that just selfish? I mean, it would mean a lot to apparently everyone, and I'm just saying no. Edit. 1. I do have an actual wedding gift already, as they sent out a wish list with their invitations. There was a point that said artwork, because they recently moved into a bigger house, and apparently they want random artwork to decorate. I oil painted them a painting I spent several days on, so I also don't want to give them a voucher as a gift. 2. Matt doesn't have any tattoos as far as I know. And 3. I don't know what my mom's problem is with all of this. I think she just wants to keep the peace. Update. So the last few hours have been crazy. First, I called my mom and she asked me again, this time very friendly, if I would do the tattoo for Matt at his wedding. I told her no, and I gave her all the same reasons I had previously given her. I added that I felt like she doesn't take me and my tattooing seriously. She didn't say anything for a bit until she tried to explain that she really thought it wasn't a big deal. I told her again that it is, and that my mom of all people should know how my job works. She agreed and apologized profusely. I then asked her if she'd like to attend and watch me work on a client's appointment, and to my surprise, she said yes. Mom is tagging along tomorrow. Now on to Maddie, or rather his bride. I finally got a hold of the bride. Let's say her name is Becky, and I asked her about the request her fiance confronted me with. She seemed surprised, as she apparently had heard from my aunt that I made them something for their new house. She assumed it would be a painting since I'm the artist of the family, and it's known that I also paint. I confirmed that, but that Maddie has come forward with this out of the blue, and that it's not a good idea for many reasons. She agreed with me immediately. I think she does have tattoos. She thanked me for telling her, as no one else had. Becky seemed really mad, but she seemed to pull herself together. I would have lost it. I'm assuming that Becky confronted Matt after our call because only 3 to 4 hours later, I checked the family group chat and there was a message from Becky. There will be no ceremony on the 13th as Matt and I decided we aren't getting married. Matt and I have things to figure out, so please text or call us tomorrow if you have questions. For the rest of the day, we'll be on flight mode. After dinner, Becky called me and apologized for Matt again. She said it was a stupid idea of his and that he just thought it would be cool. She then informed me that she still wants me to fly over for the wedding day as she will be hosting a party instead of a wedding. Everything is paid for anyways and she doesn't want anything to go to waste. I asked if they broke up and she said, "Not yet, but I'm gonna stay at my sister's place until next week. I'm assuming Matt hasn't been too great, but I'm sure I'll hear about it. Apparently, my brother and my mom aren't invited. My call must have been the last straw, but as far as I'm concerned, Becky is handling it gracefully, and Matt will be okay too, I'm sure. So I'm going to a party, but did I just make a new friend? Update. So because a lot of you wanted to know how the bring your mom to work day was, I picked her up in the morning and we headed to the studio. I showed her around, told her a few background stories about some of the artwork and photos that are hanging on our walls, and I explained to her my routine as I prepared everything. My client arrived and I handled it like I usually would, just with my mom sitting there. I explained every step of the process, and she also asked me questions about my ink, needles, technique, etc. It was a lot of fun having her around, and she really did surprise me with her openness and interest. When I was done with tattooing, my mother had to leave for work, but thanked and hugged me for bringing her along, as she not only enjoyed spending time with me, but also loved seeing me doing my job so professionally, and said that she sees my work and efforts now. On to the wedding and party. The party started at 1400 as the ceremony was canceled. I arrived and was immediately welcomed by Becky's sister. She hugged me and helped me with my painting. Everyone was outside, drinking and having a small bite already. I went to say hi to Becky and she hugged me warmly. She seemed tired, but otherwise fine. Becky was also smiling a lot, which surprised me. I went to mingle as I didn't want to start off with questioning her. I met a lot of her friends, and apparently most of them weren't too fond of Matt. I heard a few things of how he tried to change Becky to be more like his ex and stuff like that. Not a great look, Matt. Speaking of, not a single friend or relative of Matt was around, besides me and one other cousin. Later, as we sat down to eat, I asked if I could join Becky's table. They said yes, so I was sitting with Becky, her sisters, and 3 of her friends. I introduced myself to one of them, haven't talked to him before, and Becky added that I'm Matt's cousin, the one who was supposed to tattoo. A simultaneous, "Oh," came from everyone, and with that, the conversation was about Matt from the get-go. I asked what happened. The sister just rolled her eyes and was like, "What didn't?" Becky and friends told me. A while ago, Matt had apparently started to pick on Becky for being herself in various ways. It started small, like asking her to change her sports routine from workouts to only running. Then he criticized her cooking as he prefers to eat more meat and more traditional food. They discussed these topics and it always seemed fine, but he didn't stop. He asked her if she couldn't let her hair grow or get extensions, and speaking of hair, if she couldn't get them bright. Becky has shoulder-long black hair. More and more seemed to pile up until he also started to make comments along the lines of, "Can't you be more like my ex?" As I understand it, he didn't say it specifically, but it was clear what he meant. I was shocked. I asked why she didn't break up because of that, but Becky explained that in the situations, it didn't seem as bad as when you list those reasons. She had also made a few changes to make Matt happy, but continued to do what she wanted most of the time. Time went on and the issues resurfaced again and again in different ways. The last big fight was only a few weeks ago, when Matt called Becky by his ex's name. They somehow settled this, so let's skip forward to when I called Becky about the tattoo idea. After our call, she went up to Matt and asked him why he didn't talk to her about it and why he would just decide doing something like that on their wedding day. He explained that he wanted to surprise her and stuff like that. Becky went on telling him this wasn't happening and that she wanted to be able to enjoy the wedding and their honeymoon. Again, they seemed to agree in the end and he apologized. But later, as Becky was starting to cook dinner and Matt was sitting at the counter, they talked about tattoos again. Apparently, really chill discussion about tattoos in general. And Becky asked him playfully what he intended on getting tattooed. He gestured across his chest and said, "I want my birth date, our wedding date, and your birth date." But he said the actual dates. Becky said she went blind for a millisecond. The third date was in fact not her birthday. She asked him again and he repeated the same dates. She then said that's not her birthday. He persisted that it was and that she should stop trying to fool him. She said she started to cry and ran to get her purse to show him her driver's license. That's when his face slipped. He tried to get out of it by making excuses that he isn't good with dates, etc. But Becky just went straight to her phone and checked Facebook. She found his ex's profile showing her birthday. It was the date he would have gotten tattooed on his chest if I hadn't said no and called Becky. My stupid cousin would have ended up with the birthday of his ex-girlfriend next to his wedding date. Becky said she was over this and that this is enough. She started to immediately reorganize the whole wedding and honeymoon while kicking him out of the house. A bit later, she called me back. She also mentioned that she didn't want to say what happened on the phone as she thought I might tell my family and she really didn't want to hear about it. Fair, I get that. Becky changed the honeymoon booking and is now taking her best friend instead. Also, if you're wondering, Becky's dad is currently the owner of their house as they agreed to slowly pay him back. Due to his financial wealth and stability, that made more sense this way. As far as I know, Becky's going to stay there. This was truly a wild ride, and I'm pretty sure that Becky and I are going to be good friends. We really hit it off. I don't have much dignity left for Matt, so I'm not sure I'll keep the contact at all. P.S. Becky loved my painting. Am I the jerk for refusing to raise my brother's kid for him? I was adopted by the people I consider my real parents when I was 7. My biological father is my adopted mother's brother, and she adopted my sister and me from him because he's a nut job. We were all raised with the knowledge that we were adopted. If I'm being honest, the notion of adoption isn't really a thing in my culture, as biological parenthood is very important. Families will just take in a kid from an incompetent relative and raise them alongside their own kids, but the kid is always aware of who their biological parents are. The biological parents are usually involved as well, but they're not the primary guardians, and the kid usually goes back to their biological parents once they're more stable. My younger brother, who's 17, is a little jerk, and he got his ex-girlfriend pregnant. Furthermore, he cheated on her, and she wants nothing to do with him. She figured out she was pregnant too late to do anything about it. She wants nothing to do with my brother and our family, and I can't blame her. Initially, my mother was going to take the baby and raise it, but obviously, considering how things are done in my culture, my mother was expecting my brother's ex to be involved. Even when my mother promised that she had let her sign over parental responsibility and move on, she just didn't seem genuine about it. The ex-girlfriend decided to just speak to an adoption agency and adopt the baby out externally, which upset my mom, as you probably guessed why. Blood is very important to her. My husband and I have been struggling to conceive, so I offered to take the baby, but I explained that I would only do it if it was a real adoption. Not like how my culture does it, where I'd just be raising the baby for my brother. I made it clear that the baby wasn't a toy to be passed around and that I wouldn't be giving the baby back when my brother finally gets his crap together in 15 years. My brother's ex was happy with this arrangement, and we've been in the process of getting paperwork started. Everyone in the family is upset. They think I'm being unnecessarily difficult by going against our cultural conventions just because I'm infertile and want to have a baby. My mother thinks that I'm being selfish because I was basically raised in the way I'm refusing to raise this baby in, and I'm being hypocritical. She thinks I should raise the kid with the knowledge of who their real parents are, which is something I'd share with them anyway when the time was right, and give my brother an opportunity to learn to be a father. I don't think I'm the jerk here, but given the cultural perspective and the nature of my own upbringing, I'm starting to think I may be a bit hypocritical. Not the jerk. If little bro wanted to learn to be a parent, he can learn now. Do not let them badger you into compromising on this. If he wants to be a parent, he either needs to learn now or allow someone who is equipped and prepared to raise his kid for him. What's best for him isn't what's best for the baby. Sorry, not sorry. Not the jerk. You would be adopting the baby from an infant, not taking it into your family when it's older like you. Official adoption would give the child security, not worrying about being passed back on a whim to a biological parent. It could give you the state stability and security as well. Seems like a wonderful opportunity. Am I the jerk for letting my niece choose where her family lives? My brother passed when my niece was 10. He was divorced from sister-in-law at the time of his passing. My brother's assets and my niece's cut of my parents' estate were placed in a trust for my niece. I was in charge of the trust. There was some back and forth with sister-in-law over who controlled the trust, but I was ultimately the one who got control. The trust was basically able to pay off what was my brother's house, and the interest from the estate pays for its upkeep. There isn't much left after that, but at least my niece has a paid-off house. In lieu of my sister-in-law going after the estate for child support, I let her and my niece move into the house rent-free. My niece just turned 17 and is headed to her senior year of high school. My sister-in-law has since remarried and has a new family with them, 1 kid and 1 stepkid. The new husband and family have moved into the house. The new husband apparently just got a job transfer and the whole family will have to move for the job. I talked to my niece about the move and she hates the idea. She doesn't want to move with only 1 year left of high school. I agree with her on that issue. My sister-in-law wants me to sell the current house and use the funds to buy a new house in a new location. I told her that was automatically a no-go. I wouldn't buy a house in a new location with my niece only likely living there full-time for 1 more year. My niece plans to go to college and not likely in the area of the new house. This would be more of a benefit for sister-in-law than niece. I gave my sister-in-law 3 options. 1. The family can continue to live in the current house and continue the deal as is. This means new hubby's job will fall through. The new location is closer to his family. 2. We can sell the house. I'll put the money into the trust. This will force my niece to move with her family. They may have to downsize because of me not giving them money for a new house. Or 3. The family moves and my niece stays behind. She essentially does her senior year alone in the house. I'm not far from them and can check on her, but can't be there daily. I'm out of her school district, so she can't live with me and still go to the same school. My sister-in-law hates me right now over tearing her family up. I really don't care about her hating me. I just don't want to disrupt her schooling. If my niece said yes to the move, I might be willing to let sister-in-law use the money as well. So, am I the jerk for letting my niece choose where her family lives? Not the jerk. Imagine the audacity to expect your daughter's house to be sold to buy a new house for you, your husband, and your other kids. Whose house would it be? Even if she were a freshman, it's not her job to buy her mother and stepfather a house. The house and/or money from the sale of the house belongs to your niece, period. I would be very concerned about having a 17-year-old living alone. Today I messed up by losing my job, $4,000 in inventory. I'm 16 and I've been working as a cashier at a nearby supermarket for the past 6 months, so I'm still relatively new to some things. During the peak of our rush hour yesterday afternoon, 2 women arrived at the front of my line with carts full of expensive merchandise. Right from the start, I noticed that they were very talkative as I scanned their items, asking me numerous questions about myself, my life, and my job. It almost felt like a distraction. At the time, I didn't find it too strange since customers often strike up conversations like that. They shared details about their lives as traveling nurses, and one of them mentioned having worked as a cashier at a similar place to where I work. The first woman's total came to around $2,600, all for items like baby monitors, a pump, and other baby supplies. I was taken aback by the amount because I hadn't realized how quickly it had added up. It was the first time I had seen a purchase of this magnitude. Now, here's where it gets interesting. At the end of the first woman's total, she showed me a store credit card with instructions on the back that read, "Insert card, then select cash tender." I started feeling suspicious at this point, but the card looked very real, so I allowed it. She was also quite convincing, explaining how the card worked and that it was a privilege earned by people with excellent credit. So I followed her instructions. I pressed the button indicating that she paid in cash, handed her the receipt, and then it was the next woman's turn. She also had a similar cart filled with items totaling around $1,300. I admit by that point I should have caught on, and to be honest, I feel like an idiot. She handed me a card identical to her friend's with the same instructions to select cash. I pressed the same button, but since they didn't actually give me any cash, I didn't put anything in the register. It wasn't until later in the day that I discovered neither of their cards worked because I hadn't pressed card tender on the machine. Their act of inserting the cards was a simple trick, so off they went with all that merchandise in their carts, a receipt in hand, and not a single dollar spent. About half an hour later, I consulted my manager and was informed that it was definitely a scam. Honestly, I'm still shocked that I fell for it so badly. They knew exactly how to respond to every question, having a ready-made explanation for each item. They even mentioned a baby shower in relation to some of the items, although I don't recall all of their excuses. It was very well put together, I must admit. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier, but the pressure from the long line of customers behind them got to me. I fell for the change scam once. Guy handed me a $100 bill for a small purchase, talking to me while I'm counting out his change, leaves and comes back asking if he can switch it out as he wants to keep the $100 bill. Got me just the right kind of confused that he got the $80 change and the original $100 bill back, and I didn't even notice anything wrong until I went to count the drawer later. Manager wasn't mad at me, but just found it on the camera and showed me what happened so I knew what to look for next time. Really surreal seeing myself do that without realizing anything wrong. Karen coworker demands I do her job for her. I, 22 male, and this coworker just recently got hired as first-time zookeepers in the past couple of months. She seemed nice enough when I met her, and we didn't talk a whole lot as our work didn't overlap. She's being trained on small mammals, whereas I'm a swing keeper, basically a junior keeper who fills in as an assistant as needed. But a couple of weeks ago, she told me that she needs help cleaning the otters' dens and wants me to do it every single day for the foreseeable future instead of her. Which, from my limited experience in that enclosure, was not news I was thrilled to hear. I asked her why I'd need to do it every day since that's part of her job. She told me that she's pregnant and the smell in there is making her sick. I said, "They're otters. That smell makes everyone feel sick." But she insisted. I said no. Why should I have to spend half an hour in there every single day on top of everything else I already have to do? But she got mad and I reluctantly gave it a go that day. It was a miserable 30 minutes. The next day, she insisted again, but I put my foot down. I told her I hate the otter smell too, and I had other things to do besides do her job for her. I said I'd be willing to help with the cleaning for any other small animals, but not the otters. But she insisted I help with the otters and said I was being insensitive to her needs. In the end, we got in a bit of a fight and our supervisor got involved and basically took her side and asked me if I could spare some time each day to clean the otter dens, and that this was part of giving reasonable accommodation for her pregnancy, which I just didn't think was fair. And now the coworker won't speak to me. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his coworker? Please let us know. Please do leave a comment. I can't wait to read them. Am I the jerk for not going to Easter because it's always all about the kids? I'm 26, 2 kids, and 4 out of 5 sisters have kids, with the exception of Serena, who is a travel the world with a knapsack kind of gal. I love my family, but every single family outing, get-together, every dinner, lunch, everything has to be family-friendly and kid-centric. I can never get my sisters, other than Serena, when she's even in town, to go to a movie, have lunch, sit and chat without it being all about the kids. Even if the kids are having a kid playtime with each other and the adults are sitting around drinking coffee, the conversations are about the kids. Kids are called over to talk to us, etc., etc. Before lockdown, I asked my sister Julie to come over with me to get our nails done and just have some us time. She changed her mind last minute and said she was bringing her daughter as a bonding activity. We do nothing but bonding activities, and the same thing has happened time and time again. Shopping? The kids need to come. Taking a hike? All on board. I expressed my frustration, and she acted like I was being super out of line, shocked, and went on about how she can't imagine doing things without her mini-me, and that it was weird. It became a whole, "Are you okay? Are you sure? Are you depressed?" thing. The requisite Zoom family things were all about the kids with no adult time. So when we were talking about getting together for Easter, I thought, hey, maybe they'll want to catch up. I asked during a planning call, do you think we can maybe just have some time for the adults when the kids are playing so we can all catch up? My mom and sisters acted like it was the most ridiculous ask. Mom did the, "Are you okay?" and "I can't imagine wanting to spend time with my family and exclude you girls from any part of it. That's not normal." I said that I really can't sit through another kid-centric get-together, and that if we aren't going to at least do something and sit down and have cake and coffee together and catch up, just the family, then count me out. Well, they went through with it, and I ended up sending the girls over and staying home and having a great time, just me and Serena. She said that she understands how I feel, and she stands with me, because they exclude her as well since she doesn't have kids and has been clear that she never will. Of course, she and I are being talked down to and told that we're jerks to treat family like that we should have all been together as a family, and that it's time to grow up and accept that it'll never just be the sisters again. I cried about this a lot. Am I really wrong here? Is this normal and I just need to accept never seeing my other sisters one-on-one without their kids being the focus of everything? Guys, just a couple of points because it keeps coming up. I didn't ask for a kid-free Easter at all. I asked for some time for the adults to drink coffee and catch up with each other while the kids were playing. And I have friends, but family and friends are different. Well, who do you agree with? OP or the rest of their family? Please let us know. For lots of people, once they have kids, their kids become the center of their life and everything else revolves around them. It's kind of just the life they choose to live. Try not to get too upset over it. Work is 8 to 4 only. Not me, but my coworker, and I am super proud of them. The past few years, I've been putting up firm boundaries with work after being done over a few times, including not being expected to answer emails or do assignments evenings and weekends. It's taken a long time, but I've learned my worth and that my time is valuable. Our company has about 200 employees, but I work most closely with one other person who I've been encouraging to do the same. We were all put on remote work since last March, and recently the building opened again, with the exception that we would start back in person. I'll give props to them. They've done a ton of work to get the building cleaned, the air filters updated, enforcing masking, etc. However, HR at first talked a lot about how they would be willing to be flexible since most schools are still closed and people needed childcare worked out, and that they would grant accommodations with people who had health concerns. Yet, that didn't actually play out. In my situation, I had a unique childcare concern that had a simple solution, but they refused to budge. Long story short, I needed to start 30 minutes later and was told no. Several other coworkers have shared similar stories of not getting any flexibility whatsoever. My coworker has several health issues and requested to work on an alternate schedule and was told, "The job is 8 to 4, so that's when you must be here." Understandably, they were upset. We've both been there well over a decade, and it's kind of a slap in the face to dedicate yourself to a place that talks up community and family, and then told no after being promised flexibility. Here's the malicious compliance. The company handles missed time by covering in-house. So for instance, if someone has a meeting at a certain time or calls in sick, someone who has a break or lunch covers them and gets paid a little stipend for it. We're talking like $20, not much. But if you take a few extras over a week, it can add up to a nice little bit in your pay. My coworker coordinates all of this and does it on Sunday for the upcoming week. Even though they don't work on Sunday, they would say it only takes about an hour to do, and it makes everyone's life so much easier since everyone walks in Monday morning knowing who is covering when, so it's worth it. Can you see where this is going? Upset at the lack of accommodation, my coworker decided to take HR's word for it. They stopped sending the coverage email on the weekend and did it at 8 sharp on Monday. It was like the end of the world. Everyone was scrambling. Such a little thing to make life convenient, but they refuse now to do anything outside of work hours. They told me that the following weekend, managers were asking for it throughout Saturday and Sunday, but they ignored the emails. On Monday, they sent it at 8 a.m. sharp again. By the afternoon, the head boss had asked them to please resume doing it on the weekend, and they are now getting the extra hour paid by the company. I loved it. Take care of your employees, and they take care of you. Give a little, get a little. Here's some info asked about in the comments. 1. My coworker doesn't have a disability, but is nearing retirement age and has some minor medical concerns that could make getting sick very complicated. 2. From what I understand, they requested to continue remotely, and I'm not surprised that was denied. While their role could be done at home, with people back in the building, it wouldn't make much sense. They do a lot of the front office stuff, where my role is more in the background. I could do my job no problem going in only once a week, but their role really does need to be on site while people are there. I believe they had asked to do some days at home or half days at home. That would work if HR had let them. 3. It seems from what I have gathered, only 2 people were granted remote accommodations. One person I know has some complicated medical issues, so that made sense to me. Most people asking for flexibility have roles that, like mine, don't necessitate being on site. I was told that my requested accommodation would be unfair because everyone needs to be treated equally, and I get that. Except most work with clients, and I don't. My role is completely internal support. There are others like me who do back-end stuff or support in other ways who were denied what I consider minor accommodations in the spirit of fairness, but would make life a million times easier. Am I the jerk for excluding my brother's kids from some family events? Context. I come from a large family, and it's considered really normal to help out or ask for help, and we often watch each other's kids, pick things up for each other, run errands, etc. I would describe us as laid back and generally low conflict. If people have an issue with something someone does, we usually address it with them privately so as to not embarrass them. The problem. One of my brothers is married to my sister-in-law, and they have kids, all under the age of 7. Sister-in-law has really specific ideas about parenting and what her kids should be allowed to do. She expects us to abide by her rules when her kids are at other family members' houses with the rest of the cousins. If the rules aren't followed, she doesn't say anything directly, but instead sends an email to the person with clear instructions on what they did wrong. The emails read like something from a boss. This happened a number of times over the years, but an event that happened last fall caused the current issues. During lockdown, my mom has been babysitting the kids in our pod during the day and helping them with virtual school. Often, there are 5+ kids there at a time. One of sister-in-law's rules is that her kids cannot have any food with dyes in it. No allergy, it's a general health thing. My mom forgot and gave one of her kids a popsicle during the day because everyone else was having one. The kid was eating it when sister-in-law picked them up, and while she didn't say anything at the time, it was clear she was upset. My mom then received an email that began,
Per our recent discussion, it was my understanding that you understood that my kid cannot have food with dyes in it.
It then contained bullet points suggesting how she could improve. My mother was really insulted. In addition, sister-in-law CC'd my dad. He went to their house to speak with them, and sister-in-law apologized for her communication style, but pushed back on the dye thing and wanted an apology from my mom. My mom apologized, but also no longer watches their kids regularly, by her own choice. Ever since that happened, everyone is pretty cautious around them and their kids. If we're doing something that might violate her rules, we don't invite them. This is honestly most things we do, because the stuff she bans, exposure to any form of violence, refined sugars, dyes, yelling, playground equipment above 5 feet, etc., are not things we have issues with, within reason, with our own kids. Recently, my brother asked me and my other siblings about it, and we were honest. We feel like we're walking on eggshells around them. He says she communicates about serious topics through email because of her anxiety disorder. He defends her behavior as mama bear tendencies and thinks we can slowly help her by being patient. We refused. Are we the jerks for excluding my nieces and nephews? When we have big family get-togethers again, they will always be invited, but not always for other stuff. Edit. Also, just to say, my sister-in-law is often really fun and pleasant. It's really just the parenting issues that she's so controlling about. We never had issues with her before they had kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know.
Those poor babies are gonna miss out on a lot in life if their mama doesn't stop acting like that. And tell Papa he's just as guilty as long as he lets that crap go on. Seriously though, my heart goes out to those kids.
Stop working so hard? Don't mind if I do. This is ongoing, so keeping things vague. The background. I work in a corporate setting on a mixed team. The team is made up of a few different roles, each with their own reporting structure. I'm the only person reporting up to my manager on the team. I'm pretty much on my own for the day-to-day. The story. For the first half of last year, I worked for senior manager, that will be his name, on a mixed team. Some people on that team were rock stars, others were not. I've always been a go-getter, perfectionist kind of person. So on that team, I didn't let things slip through the cracks, which meant that sometimes, often, I did things beyond my specific role. Halfway through last year, I moved to a new team and thus reported to awesome manager for the second half. Again, I'm the only one for my role on this new team. Cue the new year, and with it, performance reviews. This is the one time outside of promotion that you can get a raise. I've busted my butt on the new team, and everyone I work with has shown appreciation, and this company actually did well last year, so funds are not a problem. Awesome Manager is the one conducting my review, and they asked Senior Manager for feedback since I did report to him for the first half. Awesome Manager says I'm doing an amazing job, keep it up, here are some suggestions. A Senior VP of the company loves showing off something I made. Senior Manager's notes say to not pick up every piece, allow others to fail sometimes so that they can grow and learn and better themselves. Then Awesome Manager informs me that the average rage percentage is 3%. Awesome Manager tells me they recommended I get a 4% raise. They then tell me that all of the senior managers met for the whole organization to coordinate, and coming out of that meeting, I am getting 3%. Awesome Manager cannot get a straight answer why my raise was decreased. So since Senior Manager was part of that meeting where they cut down my raise, I'm following his direction. Take on less. I've cut back to okay employee work ethic and am letting others fail and grow. Since I'm alone on my role for the team, an Awesome Manager just got moved elsewhere, I have another new manager, no one can call me out. In the meantime, I'm spending that extra energy prepping my resume for more reasons than just this. A couple of clarifications. Yes, the average raise really just keeps up with inflation. Awesome Manager did not promise me the higher percentage. They explained the whole story in that same meeting, basically giving me a peek behind the curtain. And I don't think Senior Manager was malicious, he just didn't fight hard enough for me, and he's the one that did have a say. Am I the jerk for not wanting to house my sister's fiancé? My sister, 27 female, has been with her fiancé, Dale, for 3 years. My family and myself, 28 male, absolutely cannot stand him. From day one, he was just this rude, obnoxious slob, and we don't have a clue what she sees in this guy. He's 30 and can't hold down a job for anything. Either he quits because he doesn't like it, or he gets fired after many absences. We're embarrassed to even go out to a restaurant with him because he will throw a fit over something in his food to try to get a free meal. I try to avoid interactions with him when I can because I can't stand him. With the lockdown, my sister got laid off, and they moved in with a friend a few months ago to save up on money. Especially because they found out my sister is pregnant 3 months ago. Now my sister tells me Dale and his friend got into some dispute, so they can't live there anymore. She's asking if it's okay if they stayed with me for a while, but I don't think that's going to happen. Aside from Dale being a jerk in general, I've heard he's an even bigger pain to live with. Before the lockdown, there was a whole drama with the landlord at his old place. Dale stopped paying rent and then was refusing to leave, even after being given an eviction notice. No idea how it went down, but he managed to stay there longer until the landlord could go through the whole court process to get him out. My sister told me all about it because she was having fights with Dale trying to get him to just leave already. The last thing I want is to invite that possible headache into my home knowing what a freeloader he is. Might even be harder right now if I decided I didn't want him in my house anymore, with some places still putting evictions on hold. I told my sister my concerns. She swears Dale wouldn't do that, but she couldn't even convince him to move out of the last place he was staying at. Now, I get she's pregnant, and I told her I'd be more than happy to give her a place to stay, just not Dale. She's pretty mad I'm not willing to help him out as well, and for not trusting them. They're supposed to be moving out by next week, with still no place to go. I told my sister my offer still stands for her, but I can't accept Dale with his history. She says I'm an awful brother and can't believe how badly I'm acting in their time of need. Am I being a jerk for going down this route? Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let them come stay at your house or not? Please let us know.
No way. I would offer them directions to the nearest Motel 6. I've heard they leave the lights on for you.
I got a male Karen, a Chad, arrested. I, 20 female, run a retail store with only one other person, another 20-year-old female, and some guy comes in and cussed at her. Literally, the first thing he said to her was, "Forget you." I took over and told the man, somewhere in his 50s, we wouldn't help him if he was going to talk to us like that. He made fun of me for telling him he couldn't swear, and I just ignored him and gave him the solution to the problem he was coming in about. I watched him run outside to his truck, check his back seat multiple times, important to remember, and after about 15 to 20 minutes, he came back in. He sat down and just glared at me. My coworker was helping someone else. I asked him what he needed. He said he'd tell me after our only other customer left. I told him he could tell me now. He stood up and said, "I will leave when she leaves." I responded saying, "Listen, I've been nothing but pleasant with you, and your entire time of being here you've been incredibly hostile. I'm giving you two options. You can either talk to me right now so I can try to help you, or you can leave. Because at this point, what you're doing, sitting down and saying nothing, is loitering." He was angry. He got right up in my face to intimidate me and gave me the most evil look I'd ever received. I stared right back at him. "What is it going to be?" He broke eye contact and said, "I'll leave." He walked out the door, but he did not leave. He sat in the front of his truck and kept looking through our window at us, waiting for our only customer to leave. I pointed this out to both my coworker and the customer, an older woman. The older woman told me to call the cops immediately and that the man was not mentally sound. I was hesitant, but she was right. I called the cops, but in the meantime, the man kept checking his back seat over and over again. When the cops arrived, they said hi to me first and then went outside to speak to the man. After about 5 minutes, I saw Mr. Karen trying to fight the cops. One of them later came back in and told me the situation. "So, he's going to jail tonight. There was something in the back seat of his truck that he's going to jail for. He was actually a wanted man. Are you all good here? One of us can stay here if you don't feel safe." I told him that we were fine. He had me write up a witness report. Makes me wonder what was in the back of this guy's truck. Am I the jerk for not letting my boyfriend drive my dad's Ferrari? My dad is wealthy. Not like mega rich billionaire wealthy, but pretty darn wealthy. My dad owns this Ferrari V12 supercar that he loves. He takes it out to drive a few times a month when he can, and usually likes to take it to a local track. He's very protective of that car and doesn't want anyone driving it. He let me drive it once at his track, and I had like a race car driver instructor with me. But honestly, I'm sort of afraid of it. It's really powerful and just more car than I can handle. Anyways, I'm dating this dude, and he saw my dad's car when he was over, and he asked me if he could drive it. I told him he would have to ask my dad because it's not mine, and that I don't think he would want to let him drive it because my dad doesn't really want anyone driving it. Anyways, he left it alone. He brought it up to my dad later, but my dad said no. My dad said he let me drive it once at a track with a race car driver in the passenger seat, and that he just doesn't trust anyone else to drive it. So my dad went out of town, and now my boyfriend is asking me to let him drive the car while my dad is gone. He keeps asking me where the keys are, and can he just take it for a spin, and I keep telling him no, and it's making me uncomfortable. He keeps asking. Finally, he got mad at me and started calling me names and said I should be supportive of him, that I should understand he doesn't have a rich family and will probably never have this opportunity again, and that if I loved him, I would do this for him. I don't know. I get that he doesn't really have another opportunity to drive this car, but it's just a car, and my dad would be really upset if I let him. Am I the jerk? I believe I might be the jerk because my boyfriend can't afford a car like this on his own, and I feel bad that I'm denying the opportunity to drive one, which is something he really wants, and I am denying his dream. Edit. So that people know, I did take the keys and put them in my dad's safe about 30-ish minutes after this post went up. A lot of people have mentioned he doesn't see a long-term relationship with me because he said, "This is the only chance I'll get." I honestly didn't register that, but yeah, it's got me thinking. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let him drive the car or not? Please let us know.
OP, you need to break up with this guy. He sounds like a manipulative little entitled jerk. Kinda reminds me of myself before I went to that Karen's retreat.
Am I the jerk for not supporting my daughter and grandchild? My husband, 51 male, and I, 49 female, have a daughter who's 21, Amanda. We plan for our children's future with a college fund and a small amount of money to get them started. As a teacher, I've always believed that college is not always for everyone and did not want to force this if our kids were not interested. We also let them know that this money was not their money, but ours, and we would not be using it so they could just live. We raised our kids to be responsible for their actions and the consequences of said actions, which brings us to the issue. About 2 years ago, while at college, Amanda met a guy, Tony, who was 24. Tony was not a student, but he lived in the college town. We met him a few times and were not impressed by him or his life goals. She and I are close, and a few times over the course of the relationship, she mentioned issues that were red flags to me. When she asked for advice, I was honest, and if she told me to back off, I would. When lockdown classes went virtual, so dorms closed, Tony invited her to move in with him and his family. We would have rather she had come home. In the summer, Tony suggested that they move in with us because his family had taken our daughter in for 3 months. I should probably mention that our home is a few blocks from the ocean and a couple of towns from a popular summer hangout. We told our daughter she could come home, but not Tony. Tony was very upset by this and said if she came without him, it was over. She ended up staying with him and found out she was pregnant last July. She and Tony arrived with a plan. The plan was basically us supporting them as they would be raising our grandchild. We rejected this plan, and I was able to get my daughter alone. I explained the reality of what her life would look like with Tony and their child. I let her know that while we would still pay for college, we would not pay for a place to live, childcare, Tony, baby expenses, etc. I also let her know that while she could always visit, she could not return home full-time with a baby as we are nearing retirement and a baby is just not part of that plan. We talked about options and I let her know that she was free to do what was right for her and Tony, but that they should not plan on any support from us beyond what a grandparent would do. She talked to him and went ahead with the pregnancy. Amanda has always understood that her actions are her responsibility, but Tony has not seemed to grasp the concept. He asks weekly for favors and help that we already said we would not do. Tony's family thinks we are the jerks for not providing more help, and his mother thinks that we are punishing them for not doing things the right way. Most of my family thinks we are right because Amanda and Tony knew what we would provide before moving forward with the pregnancy, and if they were not in the position to have a child, then they shouldn't have had one. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know.
Actions always have consequences. Let this be a lesson to always stay away from people like Tony. Also, don't be like him.
Am I the jerk for telling my father that my ex wouldn't give me my bracelet back? My ex, 19 male, and I, 18 female, broke up last Wednesday after 6 months. It was very abrupt, and he never fully explained why, other than saying he forgave me. I tried the best I could with my emotional control issues to make sure the relationship was healthy, but it was hard because I was his first love and he didn't know how to communicate properly. He messaged me on Saturday saying he was sorry for ignoring me, and I started asking him questions about what happened and how he could already be over me. He refused to answer and just kept telling me he didn't love me. I asked for my bracelet back and he told me he would give it back soon. I asked more questions, which I now realized made him uncomfortable, but instead of telling me this, he just blocked me once more. I didn't want to just move on because I've had the bracelet since I was 12, so I messaged his brother and he talked to him for me. He messaged me 3 hours later. We arranged to meet today, but last night he said his family was sick, so I couldn't come over, and that we should reschedule. I understood and asked when we could meet up, and that I didn't even have to come over. It was late, so he said we could talk about it in the morning. I woke up to a message from him saying he didn't want to see me and that he didn't think he should give back the bracelet because I gave it to him as a way of me always being with him, and he didn't want me to vanish from his life. I tried to contact him, but I had no luck and started to have a panic attack because of how important the bracelet was to me. I got it from my nan, who recently passed, for my 12th birthday. My dad got home when I was having my panic attack, so I told him everything. He got my ex's number from my phone and called him. He told him to give the bracelet back or he would call the police. I thought calling the police was an overreaction. My ex messaged me saying he would give it back, and we agreed to meet up tomorrow. I feel like I never should have told my father, and I didn't want to cause trouble for him. I just wanted my bracelet back. Am I the jerk for telling my dad my ex wouldn't give me my bracelet back? Edit. I forgot to mention, I gave it to him temporarily while we were together. He said he would be sure to give it back if we broke up. Well, what do you think? Was OP the jerk for telling her dad or not? Please let us know.
Of course not. That's what dads are for. If you get mixed up with a psycho, part of dad's job is making things right. By the way, where did you meet that boyfriend? The guy sounds like he needs to be locked up somewhere.
Karen harasses me in my own home and makes a fool of herself. I live in a ground floor apartment in the middle of my little town with a small courtyard at the back. There's a lovely set of glass sliding doors that open from the living room into said courtyard, and on the other side of the courtyard fence is the public footpath, with a public car park behind it. It's lunchtime here at the moment, so there's a person walking past every 5 minutes or so. It's also useful to know for context that I'm physically disabled and use a walking stick. My genetic disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also makes me look significantly younger than I am. So despite being 31 years old, I'm often mistaken for a teenager, especially by Karens, for whom I seem to be a magnet. Anyway, onto the story. So I was sitting on my sofa, watching TV and eating my lunch, when I spotted one of those little black millipedes on the carpet. We get a lot of them at this time of the year, so I used an empty box to scoop it up and chuck it over the fence, so that it hopefully won't come back into the apartment. No big deal, right? There was this Karen walking along the footpath, a fair way down from our fence, and she yelled something like,
I saw what you just did.
I didn't think she was barking at me, since I hadn't done anything wrong or unusual, so I went back inside. She then appeared at our back gate, shouting at me for
throwing rubbish over the fence and littering.
I told her I had thrown a millipede over the fence that I'd found on the carpet. She accused me of lying and said she had seen me throw a box. I opened the fly screen and held up the empty box and said, "You mean this one?" She froze and stammered a bit before saying,
Well, obviously, you threw something else then.
like I was being the idiot here. I said, "Then where is it?" And this lady actually started scouring the flower bed between the footpath and the car park for the imaginary rubbish she was adamant I'd thrown. I guess she found nothing she could reasonably accuse me of having thrown out there, because she came back to the fence and barked,
If I ever catch you littering again, missy, you'll be dealing with the police.
So I said, "Sure, I'd love to tell them about you harassing a disabled woman in her own home. We'll see how that goes for you." And she stormed off. What the heck? I get dealing with Karens in the wild, but in my own home? Wish I'd thought to snap a photo of her just in case. Hindsight is 2020. Karen roommate demands I do her taxes. My roommate, 29 female, and I, also 29 female, have been living together for 9 years. This whole time, I filed her taxes every year until last year. Every year, she'd hand me her W-2, social security card, and ID, and I'd go to my sister's place to file her taxes online. I get my sister's help because I'm dyslexic and don't want to accidentally mix up any numbers while filing. I would always ask my roommate if she wanted to go with us, and she would refuse, choosing to stay home and watch shows instead. Whenever my sister helps me with taxes, I treat her out for lunch as a thank you, whether this is going to a restaurant, fast food, or getting delivery of her choice. This is where my frustration with my roommate comes in. She would never go with me to file her taxes, saying that she trusted me. I'd take screenshots of everything to show her what was filed, how much she would get, etc. When she'd get her tax return, she'd accuse me of stealing some of it, though I could always prove that I didn't. She never pitched in any money toward treating my sister out for lunch as thanks for help, but would also get mad if we didn't bring back food for her. So last year, I told her that I wasn't going to do her taxes anymore. She whined about not knowing how to do it and being too anxious to go to a professional. I told her that she should have been more involved before, and I don't want to do everything for her. She never went to a professional to get her taxes done and didn't do it herself. She didn't file at all last year. This year, she asked me to do her taxes and I refused. She started crying and said that I'm ruining everything by not helping her. She complained to her friends at work about this, who all told me that I'm being unnecessarily mean and I should help her out because she clearly isn't responsible enough to do this on her own. They told me that she's still young and shouldn't have to worry about it so much, but she and I are literally only 3 months apart in age. She has not filed yet this year, and I'm being told that I'm the jerk for not helping her because she's too anxious to get her taxes done professionally and too insecure to do it herself. At this rate, she may not file this year too, and only my sister is on my side in this. I have really bad social anxiety about seeing a professional, and that's partially why I do my taxes myself with my sister's help. So I understand being anxious, but am I really the jerk for not helping her? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her roommate? Please let us know.
I hope you're able to find a new roommate, OP. One who hopefully you won't have to babysit.
Am I the jerk for preventing my neighbor from getting high-speed internet? So I recently got high-speed internet to my house after not having it for nearly a decade. I live in an area that has multiple options for broadband, but my house sits back about a mile off the public road, so most utilities need to be hardline to work. Despite living in a large piece of property, my one and only neighbor is about 800 feet away from me due to the original owners being family members and wanting their homes to be semi-close. We get along, but don't interact much. They have done some things that I consider rude, but they seem like generally okay people. When I first moved in, I worked out a deal with our local internet provider to run a main line to my home if I could get the neighbor to sign up as well. Reason for that is they allow a certain allowance per customer per construction costs, and with 2 of us, the total was high enough to cover everything. Now, there is no contract, so they could cancel after the first month, and I offered to pay for their services for the first 3 months as a thank you. They declined and said that they were happy with DSL. I explained that they didn't have to get rid of anything. I just needed them to allow the line to be ran underground and sign on for a month minimum, and I'd cover it. Still no. We planned on buying a new house eventually, so I never had it installed as I didn't want to pay. With everything going on and working from home, I finally worked a deal out that if I did some of the construction, they would cover any extra costs for the installation. Now, my neighbor sees what's going on and comes to ask about our new internet provider. I explained what I had to go through and that he could do the same if he wanted. Next thing I know, an installer is knocking on my door, letting me know he's going to lay cable across my driveway temporarily and that they'll need to dig it up to go across permanently. I asked what he was talking about, and he said he was installing cable for the neighbor. I said, "No, you're not. Not for my property anyway." Now the neighbor is begging me to give them an easement for his cable drop. I said no for 2 reasons. 1, you did me over years ago when I wanted the cable originally. 2, I really don't want them digging into the driveway or having to mow around a wire on the yard all summer. I admit I'm being petty, but I don't think I'm the jerk. I mentioned it to a friend and they went off about how everyone is struggling and that I should be a good neighbor and to stop being a spiteful jerk. So, just to add a couple of things because I've gotten so many questions. Under the original deal 10 years ago, I approached the neighbors about a year after moving in. I explained that I noticed we weren't serviceable by the cable company, so I approached them to find out what had to be done. I explained that the cable company had to agree to doing the work and that I would let them do everything on my property. The cable company required me to put a deposit of $10,000 down, which would be returned after we both got service to our homes. I explained that they didn't have to sign or do anything to proceed, but that I just needed them to sign up for service for a month once it was done so that I could get my deposit back. I offered to pay for that and also offered to pay for their first 3 months of service if they chose to permanently switch. They had zero interest in helping out. This alone has cost me $18,000 over the last 10 years. That deal no longer exists, and with rising costs of everything, I reached out to the cable company again to see what we could do. They agreed to cover above and beyond their normal allowance if I handled excavation. Construction costs were around $70,000. $60,000 of that was installing the hard line back to the PED where the services hook up. So I saved $60,000 by doing the work myself, and the cable company covered the remainder. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their neighbor? Please let us know.
Thank goodness we have AT&T Fiber, ain't that right, Reddit boy?
Entitled mom demands I invite her kids to a party that's not even a party. So some backstory. My brother is an ER doctor and his husband an ER nurse, so they both work long hours throughout the week. They have twins, we will call them Ann and Kin, not their real names, just the first to pop in my head. Now because of their workload, me and my sister help throughout the week by taking the kids after school a few days a week. I have them on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Well, Friday happens to be my niece and nephew's birthday. Now, due to lockdown, we can't have a big party that they're used to, but I still wanted to make it special. My niece and nephew had become friends with two kids in the building, Sarah and Blake, again, fake names. Their mother, we will call Nice Neighbor. I had become friends with her. Now, every time my niece and nephew are over, they play with Sarah and Blake. So I told the twins that Sarah and Blake could come over on Friday for a little birthday sleepover. I worked it out with Sarah and Blake's mom and got everything ready. Now here's where Entitled Mom comes in. As I was coming in the building, Entitled Mom ran up to me.
So, you're having a party tonight?
Me. What? No.
Sarah and Blake told my kids that they were going to your niece's party at your apartment.
Me. It's not a party. It's my niece and nephew's birthday, so I told them they could have Sarah and Blake over to watch movies.
Well, my kids are upset that they weren't invited.
Me. Sorry, but like I said, it's not a party. Just my niece and nephew having friends over.
My kids would love a sleepover.
Me. Oh, well then maybe you should throw one.
You could be nice and invite them. It's not nice to leave kids out.
Me. I don't even know your kids. Sarah and Blake have been friends with my niece and nephew for going on 3 years.
Well, they can always get to know each other at the party.
No, my niece doesn't like strange people.
I'm your neighbor. I'm not strange.
You tried to break into my apartment a few days ago.
You're being overly dramatic.
And you're being crazy.
Well, that's rude.
I rolled my eyes and walked away before she could say anything else. Am I the jerk for ignoring my nephew after he stole an important $50 bill from me? There's a story behind that bill, and it mattered a lot to me. My best friend Henry and I knew each other since we were in middle school. In high school, we were pretty adamant about being child-free and swore that we'd never have kids. He decided to make a little bet though. First guy to have a kid owed the other $50. It was a dumb bet that I didn't really take seriously, and I completely forgot about it until 9 years later. I was with Henry at a diner once for lunch, and he slips me a $50 bill. It took me a minute, but when it clicked, I was so ecstatic. Still one of my fondest memories with him. Two grown men hugging it out at a diner in tears after giving me the news that he's going to be a dad for the first time. His daughter was born after that. I was honored to be her godfather. Then, unfortunately, we lost him all too soon when his daughter was just 5. It's been 3 years since then, and I still miss him. We were like brothers, and I kept that bill as a memento. I see my goddaughter all the time, so the bill is also a reminder of the first time I learned of her existence. Kept it in a small box with other sentimental things of mine on top of a dresser in my room. My sister is staying with my wife and I, along with my 16-year-old nephew. They all know about this story, by the way. I've told them before many times. A few days ago, I noticed the box was in a different spot than where I had left it, and that's when I discovered that the bill was gone. He eventually confessed what he did because I was frantically looking for it all over the place. My nephew needed the money because he wanted to take his girlfriend out to eat, but my sister wouldn't give him any cash since he spent all his allowance money. Honestly, I was so furious and had asked him how he could do that, knowing that it was one of the few things I have of my best friend, and he stole it. My nephew kept apologizing, but I couldn't look at him. My emotions were a little too strong, and I just wanted to get away from him before I started yelling. My sister offered to pay me back, but she darn well knows that's not the same. However, she's saying I'm being too harsh on him because I've been ignoring him the past couple of days and he's feeling ashamed enough. She's apologized on his behalf, but does think I'm taking it too far. Right now, it's still all too fresh for me. That bill was important to me because of a memory that it holds. Now it's lost and I'll never get it back. I'm not at a place where I want to talk to him yet, but my sister feels like I'm being somewhat of a jerk by punishing him like this as he's already learned his lesson. I'd just like to know if I am. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his nephew? Please let us know.
I'd kick out that nephew ASAP, and his mom for making excuses for him.
Am I the jerk for telling my sister to leave because of her fear? I'm 22, male, and my sister, 17, female, is afraid of snakes. She hates them, can't be near them. My boyfriend, 21, male, is the opposite. He loves them, and we actually have one, who's 2, female. Because of this, we normally go see her, or if she comes to our place, my boyfriend's sister will take our girl for the day. So we have a pool, and it's been really hot where we live, so we invited my sister and my parents around. Like normal, my boyfriend's sister came and took our snake. When they arrived, everything was fine until we got in the pool. My boyfriend has a tattoo of a snake. It's a blacked out silhouette that wraps around both of his arms and his back. When my sister saw it, she freaked out and told me to tell him to cover it. She knew about his tattoo, she just expected him to cover it, which he can't do without putting on a long sleeve t-shirt. I told her no. She then went over to him and asked him to leave because he knows about her fear. This annoyed me, and I told her that if she has an issue with it, then she should leave. This is his house, not hers. She got upset and just sat inside the whole time. When they left, my mom told me that I was rude to my sister, and we know about her fear and that we ruined her day. Now I'm starting to think that I could have handled the situation better. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I've been talking to someone in DMs, and they said I should add some stuff we talked about to my post. My boyfriend's tattoo is very important to him. We got our current baby after his old snake passed. The tattoo is based on a picture of his old snake wrapped over his arm and his back. Also, self-expression is very important to my boyfriend. He grew up in a very restrictive household. His mother controlled what he did and how he acted and what he wore. We didn't just move our snake because her enclosure is built into a large bookcase in our living room. Also, this only happens once every month or so. We normally visit her. Also, my boyfriend's sister is a huge reptile nerd and loves our girl almost as much as we do. My boyfriend actually has an irrational animal fear of his own, butterflies. He knows not all phobias work the same, but he thinks that her asking him to leave is ridiculous. Also, when I say that it's his house, I mean it's his house, not ours. Old lady forgets her bank card, nice lady saves the day. Hi all! First time posting, but I've been lurking for a while. I currently work as a cashier at a major grocery store chain in the Pacific Northwest. Believe it or not, I had just been hired the previous week, and this happened yesterday on my first shift on the registers after the mandatory training on the computers in the office. So this happened towards the end of my shift. It was fairly slow, and I was the only cashier at the time, somehow. This sweet old lady walked up and informed me that she'd have to pay by check because she left her bank card at home. I told her that was perfectly fine, but I'd need to call my supervisor over to show me how to use the check scanner since I'd never done it before. She agreed and I rang her up uneventfully. My supervisor comes over and they get the check made out to the right company for the right amount, and she shows me how to scan it into the system. A message pops up on the register informing me that I need to check her ID and input the driver's license number. I inform her of such and she seems upset but not angry. Dialogue is paraphrased, but as close to what was said as I can remember. Old lady. But I left it at home with my bank card. I remember. I keep them in a small plastic box, so they're together. Supervisor. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. Unfortunately, there's no way to bypass this on the computer. Do you remember your driver's license number by chance? Old lady shakes her head, seeming sad. I'm just sort of standing back with my best sympathetic smile. My manager seems to have things handled, even though there's not much we can do. It's at this point that the customer in line behind old lady speaks up. Nice lady. If you want to make the check out to me, I can pay with my bank card. Old lady cheers up. Would you? That would be wonderful. Nice lady. Yeah, I don't want you to go all the way back home and have to come back just to buy some groceries. Old lady. Thank you so much. Old lady steps to the side to let nice lady put her card in the pin pad. Meanwhile, she makes out the check to nice lady. Once the payment goes through, I hand old lady the receipt, wish her a pleasant evening, and start scanning nice lady stuff. Old lady hands nice lady the finished check, thanks her again, and leaves. Supervisor and I both thank nice lady, and she says something along the lines of, "She seemed like a safe bet." I compliment nice lady on her good deed for the day, and the rest of the shift goes by smoothly. Supervisor tells me as I clock out that I did really well for a first day. I'd worked as a cashier before, just never at a grocery store, and asks if I'm coming in tomorrow. I tell her my next shift, grab some groceries of my own, wish supervisor a good night on my way out, and head home. I feel like we could all use a break from the Karens of the world, and this felt like a good story that deserved to be shared. Thanks for reading. Am I the jerk for reporting a family for not telling me that their son was in the house while I was babysitting? Where I am, there's a babysitting service where people around the ages of 16 to 18 who can't get a real job work for. I have the app on my phone and I get notified if the customer selects me for a babysitting session. I got a notification a couple of days ago and everything seemed fine. They had a 4th grader and they just wanted me to keep an eye on him. Their profile said that the kid was a bit unruly and talkative, but I was fine with that. What they didn't say on the app was that they had a son, not sure about his age, but young adult, maybe 19 to 21-ish, in the house I was going to be babysitting in. I wasn't allowed on the 2nd floor, so I was in the living room with the kid. I was on my phone and I had a heart attack when I saw some random adult man about 6 feet tall and big just come from the stairwell to where I was. He didn't acknowledge me, and he walked by and got some food from the kitchen and went back upstairs. I genuinely thought he was a home invader, before realizing he came from upstairs and he was wearing homeware, so he had to be family. He didn't do anything to me, but I was freaked out. I was literally in a bad situation, because I'm 5'3" and I'm 16, and I was in an unfamiliar house with a fully grown big dude. Like, it's a classic get out of there situation. I had about 4 hours left, and I didn't want a bad review, so I stayed there against all gut feelings. About 20 minutes or so later, I bumped into him again, and he asked me, "Are you the babysitter?" I said yes, and he said I was allowed to use the 2nd floor because the only reason I wasn't was because his parents didn't want me bumping into him, which already happened. I thanked him, but stayed on the 1st floor. After the session, I was furious for the situation I was put in. I wanted to call them and tell them that was not okay, but I needed their review, so I kept quiet. Later on, after they reviewed me, I reported them for not being clear with me about the situation at home. I told my friends about this because I don't know why they chose a 16-year-old girl to babysit their kid when they had a full-grown man in the house who seemed capable. And they told me reporting them was kind of a jerky thing to do because, 1, they would be permanently banned, and so I was denying the kid ever getting a babysitter. 2, I waited for a review, then I reported them. 3, the guy didn't do anything to me and was harmless. Now I'm conflicted, but I have 48 hours to call back for a report. So I need to know, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for reporting this family or not? Please let us know. My neighbor is bringing dangerous animals into our neighborhood. For some context, I live in Pennsylvania, 1 mile outside of a major city. My neighbor, 65, female, and her husband are from California. They purchased the house behind me online without ever visiting the area or apparently Google mapping the area because
The house is surrounded by trees and we just love wildlife.
we live on a soon-to-be 5-lane road that people use as an alternative to the interstate. There's 2 shopping malls and a major grocery store 1/4 mile down the road. Basically, we are not in the wilderness and live in an extended neighborhood amongst businesses and strip malls. Across the busy road is a mountain that is virtually untouched by humans. This woman is a huge activist, environmentalist, and vegan, and thinks the Game Commission is meant to hurt animals for fun. She has lived here in a residential neighborhood right outside of a city in a huge pro-hunting state for 3 years. When they moved in, they had termites and asked the exterminator to trap and release the termites. She also has not left her property in 2 years because
I just can't bear to see roadkill.
this is my neighbor. 2 years ago, we noticed a massive influx of squirrels. I had grandma confirm this. Not only was there a lot of squirrels, but they were also fat and not afraid of humans. That's when we noticed that 2 times a day, this psycho is throwing about 5 pounds of birdseed and nuts on the ground because
The squirrels depend on me to survive.
we've had squirrels hiding nuts in our house walls. Squirrels took over my husband's workshop and they rip up all the flower beds hiding their nuts. My husband kindly asked her to stop since what is not eaten will bring rats and mice. Plus, encouraging squirrels, rabbits, etc. to the immediate area will eventually bring dangerous animals as well. And he reminded her that squirrels will lose their instinct to forage the longer they have a human food source to replace the need to look for food. He was right about the dangerous animals. Last year, we had 4 separate bears reported within a 3-square-mile area of residential neighborhoods, as well as bobcats making a weekly appearance that we could hear. We ended up reporting her to the Game Commission 3 times last year, and they found multiple bear poop piles in her yard. Game Commission told her that she was responsible for the bears and ended up sending her a certified letter banning her from feeding any wildlife within our state. She didn't listen, and all winter I watched this lunatic sweep away snow in the grass to scatter her pounds of seed and nuts on the ground. Now spring is here, and we have a mama bear with 3 cubs roaming the area as well as 2 other lone bears. I love wildlife, but if I wanted to live among it, I would have bought a house on the other side of the mountain, like she should have. My issue with her is these animals are coming down from the mountain and crossing a very busy road to get to her daily/nightly buffet. It's not safe for the animals to be inadvertently luring them off the mountain. Last year, we had 2 bears hit by cars within a half-mile of our house. One of them was relocated by the Game Commission an hour away, came all the way back to the area, and was hit crossing the road in front of my house. At this point, I don't know what to do with this whack job. Clearly, reporting her does not help. She's so consumed with helping wildlife that she refuses to see that she's harming it instead. On top of it, we are all only living in this house until it's rezoned commercial and can sell it. She's so concerned for the wildlife/environment and is raising heck at township meetings about any major projects moving forward. I want her gone, or at the least, be told to shut up. Well, what would you do in this situation? Please let us know.
Maybe we can get one of the bears to eat her.
Am I the jerk for kicking my 3 sisters out of my wedding after they came with their kids? My wife and I got married 2 weeks ago. We wanted a child-free wedding, so we've let everyone know, my family, in-laws, and friends, and relatives, and everyone was okay with it, except for my family. I have 3 sisters, all with kids from 2 to 10. My mom said it was illogical to not allow kids since 1, this never happened in the family, and 2, my sisters live towns away, so the kids can't be left alone. After a lot of arguing and others getting involved, I stood my ground and they agreed to not bring kids. At the wedding, no one brought kids. My parents and aunts were already there, but then I saw my 2 sisters arriving with their kids. I immediately went to ask what's the deal. They began arguing with me when I said I won't be letting them in with the kids. I saw my older sister come with her kids in the car. I was upset. I asked why they decided to go against the rule and bring kids. My mom started yelling at me when I told my sisters they weren't allowed in with them. Everyone was yelling at me. I had to get the security involved to make them leave. My parents and aunt left shortly after. They were so upset with me. I got nasty texts and a letter, and my cousin posted about my crappy wedding on Facebook. Days later, I've gathered the family and explained that what they did was wrong. I asked if I allowed my sisters with their kids, what message does that send to my in-laws and friends who wanted to bring kids but they couldn't? My sisters argued with me, and it turned out my mom told them to bring their kids and she'd deal with me later. I told them they could have arranged for a babysitter, but my mom said they wanted to celebrate as a whole family. Said that I ruined my own wedding by making a scene, and everyone will always remember my wedding as a disaster, a crap show because of mine and my wife's child-free bull. They said the only way to fix it is to have another wedding/party and include everyone, especially the kids. I called them unreasonable. I asked mom where the heck she got the nerve to even demand that. They blamed my wife and claimed it was deliberate. I left. They started talking to my wife, trying to convince her that they don't approve of what happened and that they're giving us the chance to fix the situation. Otherwise, the relationship is damaged. This caused me a headache, and I don't think what I did was wrong. I just wanted them to have some respect for my wife and her family. Well, who do you agree with? OP or his mom and his sisters? Please let us know.
I can't believe how disrespectful they were to you.
Entitled mom loses it when I block her daughter on social media. So, this was this morning, and I am a bit upset. My ex-friend decided to block me on all social media because of a text message stream we had back in November of last year. I'll try to rewrite it here. Also, we're both 14, if that clarifies anything. Friend. So I like other friend's name. How about you? Me. I like you. Friend blocks me. Now I'm confused, and I asked her friends why she did that. They all say it's because she hates me for putting her on the spot like that. For the rest of middle school, she bullied me and got her friends to as well whenever they saw me. During quarantine, I guess she unblocked me because I got a text from her saying, "Hey, I'm sorry about what I did. Can we be friends?" I thought about this for a bit, and I hate being rude to people, so I just said sure. Now her friends at golf think we're dating. She calls me names like Boo and Babe, even though I have asked her not to. This was my final text message with her. Me. I don't understand why you're calling me this. We aren't dating. Friend. Yes, we are. You asked me out when you accepted my friendship again. Me. I never meant it that way, and if you think that, then I'm breaking up with you. Friend. You can't do that. I'll choose when we're over. Me. Alright, bye. I block her. A few days later, or this morning, I get a knock on my door. I open it to see friend bawling with her mother entitled Mom. Me. May I ask why you're here? Entitled Mom.
How dare you break up with my daughter?
Me. We weren't even dating.
Yes, you were, you little jerk. You're such a jerk for ruining my daughter's life.
At this point, I start to close the door, knowing I won't get anywhere by talking to them when the entitled mom juts her foot out to keep the door open. She is significantly larger than me, so she can easily overpower me and manages to get into the house. Me. Get out of my house! Entitled Mom.
I won't leave until you agree to date my daughter again.
I pull out my phone and call the cops while trying to make sure entitled Mom doesn't go anywhere. I was home alone, so my parents couldn't exactly help, considering they were at work. About 15 minutes later of arguing, the police arrive and start asking questions. Officer, what seems to be the problem? Entitled Mom.
He attacked me.
Me. Actually, she broke into the house and demanded I date her daughter. Officer. Ma'am, please step outside.
No, this little jerk needs to date my daughter.
The police officer was chill the whole time and eventually got her off my property. I still have friend blocked and haven't heard from them yet. I haven't pressed charges and it seems to have mellowed out. I'll update if anything happens. Edit. For everyone saying to press charges, we decided against it. She doesn't have a great life, the dad is out of the picture, and we don't want to make it worse. Thanks for all the support though. Most of y'all have given positive feedback, and I thank the nice people for that. We are, however, going for a restraining order, and I'll update when that happens. Am I the jerk for taking my son to a plastic surgeon without his mom knowing? We have a 12-year-old son who spends 50-50 with me and his mother. He had these 2 moles on his face, one on his left cheek and the other on the corner of his nose. He's become quite sensitive about it lately and wanted them removed. He's been very vocal about it. I took him to the doctor for something unrelated and asked him about it. He gave me a number of another doctor who happens to be a plastic surgeon. We had a consultation with the plastic surgeon who said it was no problem removing them with a scalpel. In fact, he offered to do it right then and there because it would take less than 10 minutes. Otherwise, we would have to schedule something and the next appointment would be in October. I asked my son if he wanted to and he said yes. My son just needed 1 stitch and is healing quickly. He's quite happy with the results. I dropped him off today at his mom's and she went nuclear over his moles being removed. She said that I should have asked her before getting the procedure done and that our son had plastic surgery. I explained to her that he's old enough to make his own choices on the matter and that the doctor offered to do it at the consultation. Plus, that's not really a big deal. We're talking about 2 moles. That's why I didn't call her. It's like a parent getting mad at another parent for not consulting them over their 12-year-old's nail polish color. Edit. Mole removal is a simple procedure. Edit. For people asking why I didn't wait until October, he has school pictures next Thursday. He didn't want to take a picture with the moles on his face, so the opportunity came to remove his moles and I took it. If I had stopped and consulted my ex, then she would have gotten all riled up over 2 moles. I still would have signed off even if she said no. That would have upset her even more. Well, what do you think? Should he have gotten permission from his mother before he did this or not? Please let us know. Mom forces me to give away my car. A little backstory. I'm currently 29 and happily married. My wife's job has afforded me the ability to have good health care, including counseling for mental issues. We've been planning on having kids soon, and a few years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to sort myself out. I've been doing really good with it and organizing a lot of my past. I always thought things weren't that bad for me, and I had a good family and a good life. But while sorting through the memories, my therapist and I have definitely identified trauma caused mostly by my mother. To put it simply, my younger sister is her favorite. I'm not sure if it's because she never wanted a boy or because she sees all men as evil. It's a little ironic because I grew up without religion and her dad had always said I would go to heck because I'm not baptized, but she's always had a problem with my gender. It's kind of messed up. So about 6 years ago, I had just graduated college and had my car repossessed since I was out of a job. My grandmother, Mom's mom, had given me $2,000 to buy myself a car, partly as a graduation gift, and partly because I really needed help. Since my wife was still in school and hadn't actually started working yet, she's a military officer. I was trying to pay my own bills with no steady work and a degree that was useless. My dad, who has had a really rough time of it, causing a lot of my family's financial hardships, put his godlike skills at buying and selling cars into helping me find a decent junker I could use. Since he didn't work, he spent a lot of time with me, teaching me a lot of his trade so I could research cars, negotiate, and come away paying a good price for something that steers and stops. I ended up buying a 1998 Honda Accord for about $800, a great deal from the $1,200 asking price. It had a broken windshield and the radio was missing out of it, not to mention the door handle was broken on the driver's side, so it was difficult to open. It turned out to be a great car. The engine and transmission were solid, and I invested the rest of my grandma's $2,000 into it to fix the windshield, buy a new stereo, and buy a new handle. After a week of tinkering, I was super proud of this little trooper of a car. For what it was, I loved it. Fast forward a year or so, and I got married. My wife had bought a car for herself after graduation, and we were going to be stationed out east while she went for a master's degree. I was excited to get out of my hometown, and now I realize I was more excited to get away from my mother. My mom was going to miss me, but she was excited for me, until I told her that I was planning to bring my car out east with me. My sister still lived with my parents at the time and had no car, but she did have a job and often got rides from me, my parents, or her friends. My mom and dad shared a vehicle, but my dad didn't work, so their transportation situation wasn't the worst. My mom didn't share this sentiment and started in on the hints that they could use my car. The city we were moving to would make two cars redundant and inconvenient. My car wouldn't make it out there anyway. All her standard manipulative moves to convince me what she wanted was the right thing and that my sister needed a car for work. For a while, I've pondered if this was "am I the jerk" kind of story, but just wait until the end. One day, during one of the shuffles where I had to pick up my mom and sister at the same time because my dad was running errands, they cornered me in the driveway. Mom: "Your sister needs your car, and you have no use for it." Me: "I get that, but it's my car. I could use the money from selling it." Sister: "I can't get to work without a car, and without you helping us, I'll get fired." Me: "Why not buy my car? I'll sell it to you for what I bought it for. It's worth way more now." Mom: "That's not fair to us. We don't have that kind of money to spend. We need your help." It went on like this, each of them getting more frantic and not listening to my logic. I tried to defend myself and brought up how I'd been able to buy a car when I was 16 using my own money. I pointed out that if my sister saved rather than spent her money, $800 wouldn't be that hard to come up with. They both got offended at the mere suggestion and both of them started to cry. Again, I wasn't very experienced with manipulation at this time, so it didn't come across as obvious that they were using appeals to emotion to sway me. After about an hour-long argument and them screaming at me, I relented. I told them my sister could have the car, and I gave her the title the next day. As the years passed, I figured, what the heck? It's my sister and I love her, so why not help them out? It's not like I really needed the money anyway, since my wife makes more than enough money. I even helped my sister with some repairs when I came to visit. I changed out the crappy aftermarket wheels with steel ones from the junkyard. I fixed the AC blower motor, changed the CV axles. That car was a good little trooper, and it stayed in the family, so whatever. That is, until about a year ago. She called me one day and told me that she sold it for $2,000 and turned around to buy herself a new car. I told her good job and that she flipped it for a great profit, but I couldn't help but feel mad about it. After a while of processing the feelings, I realized why I was upset. She had taken the charity I had given her, the hard work I had put into keeping it driving and fixing it up, and she had sold it, making a 100% profit on it and using that money for herself. I never got a dime. It's like I threw that $2,000 for my grandmother away, like I took it and set fire to it 6 years ago. Okay, now I do realize that this has been going on for years with my mom and sister. So many messed up memories from my childhood, all of which revolved around me having something and it being taken away because my mom didn't know how to properly communicate or just wanted to make it fair for my sister who always lived the easy life. And yet she's the one who has her self-diagnosed depression and anxiety. I love them both, and it makes it easier now that I don't live near them. Edit. First off, this really escalated quickly. I've never had a post get so much attention. Thank you for all of your support and insight. It's probably hyperbolic to say I was forced to give my car to my sister. It's more like I felt forced because of a lot of family history. My family has always been blown apart since my father's family are from a foreign country, but my mom's family has always had really unhealthy relationships. She doesn't talk to her sister and only started talking to my grandmother after I finished high school. I have deep-seated fear for my kids to grow up the way I did with family problems and people not speaking to each other. So because of this, I feel like I have to say yes to my mother to prevent history from repeating itself. Also, a few of you have asked about my father, so I figured I'd give it more info. He was a very good salesman, like really good. Many years of experience and made our family very wealthy through elementary school and junior high. But then financial troubles came in, partly self-inflicted by my dad, but partly because of the housing bubble crash in 2008. He spiraled into depression after moving away from us to find better work and developed an addiction. This drained any savings they had because his only thought was getting more to chase away the pain. Plus, his mother, again who lived overseas, developed Alzheimer's, and this made things worse for him. He has been recovering for a long while and even got back into the business after he got clean. But a series of crappy dealership owners have destroyed what little confidence he had left. The way I see it, after making my mom have a comfy life for so many years where she didn't work at all, he deserves the retirement he ruined. Don't get me wrong, he's not a saint, but he's the only one that cheered for me or tried to make things truly fair between me and my sister. In a way, he's the only parent I truly love, so I probably make excuses for him. Have you ever felt forced to give something away that you didn't want to? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I give away my sanity sitting here listening to you every day, Reddit boy.
Customer thought we were wasting her time, so we hurried up. So I work as a mover for a very small moving company. My boss, let's call him Mike, is a really nice guy. It's really just a two-man operation, with me working as a subcontractor under him with a few regular guys we call in for bigger moves. It's really physically demanding work sometimes, but typically our customers are super nice and the pay is pretty good. Most people are just happy to have someone else to lift their heavy stuff and get it into a truck. And we're always super careful to not cause any damage to the buildings we're moving in and out of, or the items we're moving, which most people appreciate. Not this lady, let's call her Darcy. So Darcy booked a move with Mike and told him she had a small storage unit she wanted us to load up into a 20-foot truck. We said, no problem. As the date of her move approached, though, so did a huge snowstorm. Days before her move, the news started reporting that the weather was expected to take a severe turn for the worst. Not uncommon for the time of year in our state, but also something not to be trifled with. We called Darcy a couple of days before the move to see about rescheduling to avoid the storm, and she said she absolutely had to move that day. No other days would work. A lot of, probably much smarter movers would have just canceled, but after talking, Mike and I thought it was no big deal. We move in the snow all the time. Just meant we would have to dress up appropriately and be extra careful not to injure ourselves or damage any property. Cut to the day of the move. We get to Darcy's storage unit expecting a 10 by 10 by 15 standard storage unit full of your usual stuff based on what she had indicated on the phone and loaded into the 20-foot truck. That's a pretty easy job to get done in the 2 hours that she had already prepaid for. As we pulled up, the snow was already coming down pretty heavily, and the first thing that made us nervous was the truck. Instead of a 20-foot truck, there was a huge 26-foot truck. Darcy greeted us by the truck and showed us the storage unit. Darcy:
Okay, so this is our unit. We shut down our businesses, and I'm moving it out of town to pursue other opportunities, and I need all of this loaded up in 2 hours. The last movers I had got it unloaded in about that long.
Mike said something about the truck being bigger than she told us. Darcy:
Yeah, it's the biggest one U-Haul had. Last time we used another company, and it was much bigger. I'm worried about getting it all, but you guys will have to figure it out. I need all of it.
This was a huge storage unit, like the kind you'd store a few cars or some farm equipment in. Then we opened it up, and it was filled with what appeared to be the contents of a couple of pretty decently sized businesses. A dozen of those huge floor-to-ceiling filing cabinets, several desks, office chairs, and some really huge glass tables. And all of it was incredibly heavy. Now, our company's safety guidelines for weight limits are 100 pounds per person lifting an item, but there's no real practical way to enforce that in the field, so we usually wind up using our best judgment, even if the item is over that limit. Nearly everything there was over limit, but we had our equipment and we were pretty confident we could handle everything weight-wise. Mike and I are both pretty strong, but in my estimation, this was definitely going to take a bit longer than 2 hours. Mike told her that we would do our absolute best. To be fair, he should have leveled with her then and there that it would take a bit more time, but he probably wanted to see if we could just get it busted out as quick as possible and see where we would be at before getting the customer needlessly worried. Darcy sat in her truck nearly the whole time we were working so she could stay warm. Perfectly understandable since it was -2 outside and the snow was coming down pretty hard, though she'd occasionally roll down her window to offer critiques, mostly about how much time we were taking going up and down the metal ramp of the truck, which was now covered in ice and snow. About an hour and some change into the move, Darcy gets out of her truck and starts chatting with Mike about her previous movers and how they did cause some damage to her stuff, but they were so fast. It was weird. She went back and forth between complaining about them and praising them for their speed, and she kept referring to them as the professional moving service I hired, which really bugged me, because the way she said it seemed to be implying that because we aren't a big national company like Mayflower, then somehow Mike and I weren't professional movers, despite the fact that this is literally our full-time jobs. Now we're far enough into this move that we could tell her this was going to run long. Mike decides it's a good idea to let her know that it's probably going to take a half hour or so longer than expected, which was still a feat considering how much there was to move and how well packed the truck was. I pride myself on playing a mean game of truck Tetris. Darcy was not having this. She started to get upset and started saying how we were just trying to get more money out of her and we were dilly-dallying. Yes, those were actually the words that left the mouth of a grown woman. Then she starts in on how the professional movers got this same stuff unloaded in 2 hours. It should take the same time to load it. Mike explains to her that unloading always takes less time than loading because you're moving it into a bigger space and you don't have to pack and pad the stuff to fit into a truck. I also mentioned that there's literally a blizzard coming down and we're only going to go a little over. She gets quiet and is seething. Mike can tell how angry she is and lets her know we won't charge her for any extra time since it's not her fault the weather is bad. He also brings up that they damaged her stuff and we've done a pretty good job. Darcy,
I don't care. You said 2 hours. I expect it done. Just get it done. I'm going to leave you guys a terrible review.
She stomps back to her truck without saying a word. I'm usually pretty chill, but I was already getting increasingly mad at this woman. Her yelling at my boss and calling us lazy when we were risking our health and safety to move her stuff in a blizzard was just too much for me. Mike thinks about this for a moment. I know customer reviews are super important to us as a small business. The booking site we use highlights the last handful of reviews, so a bad one takes forever to stop showing up as basically the first thing people see when they click on your page. So I'm expecting Mike to try and keep her happy, but instead, he just grins and turns to me. Mike, forget it. You heard her. Cue malicious compliance. She wanted it all loaded in 2 hours? That's exactly what we'd do. The front half of her truck was loaded up neatly, with everything padded and stacked tightly floor to ceiling to keep it from moving on the road. I pride myself in my ability to load a truck properly and safely without wasting any space. The second half of her truck was the worst, junkiest truck I've ever loaded in my life. We're talking huge, heavy office furniture haphazardly stacked on top of each other at the weirdest angles, heavy stuff on top of light stuff, anything to just get the storage unit empty and the truck door closed. We even stacked really heavy office chairs on top of glass tabletops. By the end of it, the truck looked like you'd ask Esker or Giger to draw you a picture of an office. I just want to be clear. We've never intentionally damaged a customer's property, and we never would. We pride ourselves on our professionalism, courtesy, and specifically our ability to get your stuff where it's going safely. But the particular combination of unsafe conditions and this lady's outright disregard for our safety and feelings was just too much. And technically, we didn't damage anything. Nothing was broken when we closed the truck doors, but literally, the first bump in the road or decently tight turn was definitely going to cause hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars in damage. We closed the truck door and walked over to Darcy's truck and let her know. Mike went to her truck. He told her that we were done and that he wasn't going to charge her at all for the move. She insisted that,
I'm not poor and I don't need charity.
And Mike just said that it was clear that she wasn't happy and that he didn't need her $150. That's right, we charged $75 an hour, so the extra half hour we needed to do it right would have cost her a whopping $37. He canceled the job and refunded her what she had already prepaid. As we drove away in Mike's car, I looked at him. Me, you realize that by the time she gets where she's going, she's looking at a lot of damaged furniture, right? She's going to hit us with a bad review and maybe even try to sue. Mike, she was worried about paying an extra $37. I doubt she'll risk more money on hiring a lawyer. And besides, you can't leave a review on the site if the job gets canceled. We just gave her exactly what she wanted. And besides, it's worth losing out on the money I would have made just to see her face when I say I didn't need her $150. When he dropped me off, he still paid me for my time because forget that lady. My boss, Mike, is a really nice guy. Karen insults my wedding ring to my face. This happened to me some years ago. It's my favorite example of entitlement. I'm typing this story on my phone, so please forgive the bad grammar. Backstory. When I first met the man who became my husband, we were not well off. He moved across the country to come live with me and had not a penny to his name. He proposed to me without a ring, which I was perfectly okay with. It was incredibly romantic. He popped the question spontaneously and is still one of my happiest days of my life. He promised when he was better off financially, he would buy any ring that I wanted. A while after our engagement, the day came where he surprised me by taking me to a jewelry store. He had saved a $5,000 budget plus a little wiggle room for some credit if needed. He told me to go nuts. It was so fun and romantic. I tried on dozens of rings, diamonds, platinum bands, lesser gemstones, etc. Then I saw a set of steel/titanium rings. They were originally designed for the grooms, not for the brides, but I had never been a big diamond fan, and I preferred simple flat rings to mounted stones. I ended up falling in love with a super nice, simple black titanium ring with angled grooves. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I wanted. And best of all, they were cheap, less than $200. Husband liked them too, so much that we got him a matching band. We decided to use them as both the engagement ring and the actual wedding ring. We had to special order them as the jewelry store didn't stock our sizes on hand. I got a surprise when they arrived to find that my husband had requested engraving on the inside of mine. It said, "My Precious." I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love that ring to death. I wear it to this day and it still makes me smile. The story. This took place 7 years after I got married. I worked at a chain sandwich shop where we assemble the sandwiches in front of the customers. My store was next to a yoga studio, CrossFit training, and plastic surgeon's office, so we got our fair share of Karens and holier-than-thou rich people. It wasn't uncommon for somebody to drive up in a $100,000 sports car, toting a Prada bag and wearing sunglasses that cost more than my rent. They almost always came in to order missed picky/complicated subs, then complain about the price. We were quite used to these kinds of people, but this lady took the cake. Enter the entitled Karen and her bratty teenage daughter. They looked like the part to a T. They proceeded to order the usual complicated/picky subs, asking tons of questions about the nutritional info of every item. To assemble the food, we wear clear plastic food service gloves. Because my ring is flush to my hand and won't rip the gloves, I had approval from the manager to wear it at work. While assembling this woman's sandwich, her teenage daughter notices my ring. Entitled daughter.
Oh, that's so cute. Is that a promise ring?
Me. No, that's my wedding ring. Karen scoffing loudly.
Are you serious?
Me. Yes, it's both my engagement and wedding ring. It has been for several years. Karen looked me dead in the eye and said,
You have a cheap husband.
I balked at her comment, but tried to remain professional. That may be your opinion, ma'am, but I happen to like this ring. I picked it out myself. Karen.
Then you have terrible taste in jewelry.
She then turned to her daughter.
If your father had given me a ring that ugly, I would have left him on the spot. Make sure your future husband gets you a ring that at least has diamonds in it.
I was floored. Usually I get tons of compliments about my ring. I never expected someone to insult it, let alone straight to my face. I was so flabbergasted, I couldn't even continue working on our food. I excused myself and went into the back and told my coworker to finish them up for me. I couldn't even stand to be around them. When I told my manager the whole story, he almost didn't believe me. We had to watch the security footage to prove it actually happened. Never saw that entitled woman again. Glad she didn't come back. I still shake with rage every time I recount this story. I still have that ring on my hand today, and it's still the most beautiful, wonderful ring I could ever hope for. I love my husband very much. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and that matters far more than any jewelry. Have you ever had a Karen insult you to your face? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
We know you sure have, Reddit boy. Every single day.
Entitled mother refused to look after me when I got sick. This happened a year ago, and my entitled mom thinks she did nothing wrong still. This happened when I, 18 female, was 16, and I was still living with my entitled mom. I woke up one morning in extreme pain coming from my bladder, and when I went to the bathroom that morning, there were blood clots leaving my body. My entitled mom took me to the doctor right away, and they had to take a sample of my urine. I should also mention I was struggling to walk as the pain was that bad. Anyway, after looking at the sample and doing some tests, I was diagnosed with a kidney infection, but luckily I didn't need to go to A&E. I was taken home and had to miss college. My boyfriend, still together, and I were only dating for a week at that point, but I called him and told him what had happened, so he couldn't see me that day. He said he would come over as soon as he finishes all his classes for that day to come look after me. Well, throughout the whole day, my mother refused to feed me, give me pain meds, or even see me, despite the fact I had started to develop a fever and started to become very sick. By the time my boyfriend came around, he checked my temperature and said I was too hot to touch, and opened all the windows in my room and found a fan to try and cool me down. After this whole thing, I was finally able to sleep, and he kept an eye on me as he let me sleep on his chest. When I woke up, he had some pain meds for me to take and told me my entitled mom wouldn't tell him where they were, so he had to ask my younger brother, who had no idea I was sick. He thought I was still at college, bless him. So they raided the kitchen until they found some. Seconds later, my entitled mom offered my boyfriend food and my stomach growled, but she chose to ignore that. My boyfriend heard this and said he wanted a cheese toastie, but would like it cut in half. She did just that, and he gave me the other half, while she just glared at him. My boyfriend stayed till 10 p.m. to make sure I was all right and had his parents pick him up. After he left, she banned him from coming over, and I asked why. I was given no reason. I told him the next day, and guess what? He turns up in his rugby uniform and stayed for another 2 hours before leaving for his rugby. To say she was upset was an understatement. He laughed the next day when I was able to return to college when I told him what happened. The thing is, my entitled mom has never fed me when I'm sick or have an infection. I don't know why, but that's how it is. However, she always makes sure my younger brother is fed and well medicated whenever he's sick, so I think she just favors him more than me. I should mention that my brother isn't entitled, but is one of the sweetest people I know, and is famous for his hugs in his primary school, and about a month later I moved out of her home into my awesome dad and stepmom's. I've been loving it there ever since. My boyfriend, dad, and stepmom all get along great, so I'm happy for that. Elderly Karen kicks my ankle because I'm faking an injury. So a bit of backstory first. I, 25 female, have about 5 different things wrong with my left foot/ankle. 3 forms of tendinitis and 2 joints with osteoarthritis in my foot. I also had surgery on this ankle about 2.5 years ago. I deal with a lot of pain and have a very noticeable limp. I'm in pain almost every single day of my life, and currently there isn't much I can do to alleviate the pain. If anyone were to look at my ankles side by side, they can instantly notice that the left one is quite a bit bigger, and on a really bad day, it swells up to about twice its size. Cast. We've got me. We've got Karen, the elderly lady. We've got nice employee. On to the story. This literally happened last week after work. I work 10-hour shifts and range from either being on my feet the whole time to anywhere from possibly sitting most of the day. Yesterday was a very busy day, so I was on my feet the whole time. By the time I got off, I was in a lot of pain, probably around a 9 on the pain scale. When I got off of work, I needed to stop at the grocery store to pick up some veggies to go with dinner last night. I was doing my shopping and was just getting through the store pretty slowly as not to cause any shooting pains in my ankle/foot. All of a sudden, this elderly Karen stops me and goes,
I just hate your generation. All you guys do is fake injuries so you don't have to work. Your limp isn't real. Get over yourself.
Me. Okay. Tries walking away. I was so exhausted and really didn't care what she thought. I just wanted to get my stuff and leave and go home to ice my ankle. Karen walks up behind me and pretends to stumble and full-on kicks my left ankle.
Oops, sorry.
Me yelps in pain and now fully upset while also crying in pain turns around. Okay, jerk. Look at my ankles. Do you notice the difference in sizes? I'm actually in a lot of pain. I just got off a 10-hour shift of being on my feet the whole day and have multiple injuries in this leg. Karen, surprised Pikachu face.
Well, how am I supposed to know that?
Me. You aren't, because we don't know each other. But you decided to make my problems your business by saying I'm faking it and then kicking me. Nice employee walks up after hearing my yelp and commotion. What seems to be the issue here? Me. I was accused of faking an injury because my generation sucks, and then was kicked in my bad leg. Karen.
She's faking it, and you can tell she can walk just fine. I didn't mean to kick her. I stumbled and it just happened.
Nice employee turns to me. Would you like the police to be called to file a report? Karen goes pale white and starts to stutter. Me. No, I just want this lady to buzz off and to finish my shopping and to go home. Karen tries to continue pleading her case, but instead got kicked out of the store, and I got a discount on my groceries. No big, interesting ending. I also didn't file a report because of the time it would take, and I was in so much pain I just wanted to lie down. Edit. I see a lot of people are saying I should have pressed charges. I don't plan to press charges at all because the police in my town are incompetent and just generally suck. Also, big possibility that they would have taken her side because of my age. Also, the grocery store I went to didn't have any cameras. Lastly, I couldn't even remember this woman's face or if I heard her name anyway. I don't think she injured my ankle anymore because this morning there wasn't any bruising and the swelling had gone down from the night before. You want a starfish? Okay. I used to work at a well-known pet store a few years back and was the person my coworkers came to for any type of aquatic/reptile/aviary/small animal advice. This isn't really a big event like a lot of the stories I read on here, but this always makes me laugh to think about, so I figured I would share it. I'm in the back room cleaning out the cricket bins when one of the newer employees came up to me looking really frustrated. After talking about it, I learned there was a woman on the floor who wanted to purchase our chocolate chip starfish, but apparently knew nothing of saltwater tanks and was being unreasonable and had gone through 2 other associates already. I hated doing crickets, so I gladly traded handling the Karen over that and made my way to the floor. Karen.
Finally, someone else who might actually help me. I want this one here.
I looked in her cart and noticed a small box of aquarium salt and a 5-gallon tank. Me. Sorry you were having trouble, ma'am. Since I'm just walking into the situation, we have a few questions we like to ask people before selling them live animals, so I'll just run through those with you real quick so we can get you on your way. Karen, over-exaggerated sigh.
Fine, whatever. Hurry up.
Me. Perfect. What size is the saltwater aquarium setup you have at home, and what fish do you currently have in it?
Like I was telling the other kids, I don't have one already. Can't you people listen? I have this one in my cart and this salt right here. I'll set it up when I get home. I want this starfish for my kids.
That was literally all she had in her cart, ignoring the fact that she was trying to cram the ocean into 5 gallons. She had no filters, heaters, substrate, hides, nothing. Me. Got it. So ma'am, the issue is you need to have your aquarium set up ahead of time before you purchase fish, and that takes time. Also, a tank that size is not acceptable for any type of saltwater setup, so if you'll just follow me, I can show you what sizes you'll need. She follows me to the tanks, and I point out a 55-gallon tank.
Are you kidding me? Did you see the size of the starfish? No, I want this 5-gallon.
Me. Well, unfortunately, that is not an option. You'll also need more than just a tank and some salt.
Fine. What do I need to get out of here?
Here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. I grabbed another cart and started grabbing all the basics you need to start a saltwater tank, which for those of you who don't know, that is everything but cheap. She was following me around and kept trying to yell at me, but anytime she would say something, I'd interject with a, "Oh, this tubing is on sale. Good for you." Or, "Oh, your kids will love this substrate's color." And she would just get redder and redder in the face. About halfway through me getting the things she needed, totaling so far as $500, she yelled at me for being incompetent and
not selling the animals to loving homes,
and stormed off. I put everything back with a huge grin on my face and called our sister locations to warn them about a potential Karen heading their way. How I got a Karen's car towed. I recently bought a house and moved in. The previous owner rented the house out to students and transformed a big part of the front yard into a parking place. My front yard is basically just 4 parking spaces. I live alone and basically only use one of the parking spaces, but while the painters, handyman, and gardeners for the backyard were there, they used the other parking spaces during the day because the nearest community parking spaces are half a kilometer from my house, so about a 5-minute walk. When they were done and I moved in, my elderly neighbor, who cannot walk without a cane, asked if she could continue the deal she made with the previous owner. She showed me the contract she made with the previous owner that states that she can use it in exchange for a home-cooked meal once a month. I told her she didn't have to give me anything as I understood her situation, but she insisted. So I signed the contract to let her use the space closest to her house. This went well for a couple of months before another house in the street was sold and the new neighbor asked if their handyman and painters could use the parking places until they were done, as it was not handy to make them walk all the way to and from their truck. You're not allowed to park in the street. I told them it was fine, but only the handyman and painters can use the spaces. When they are done, I did not want others I did not make a deal with using my parking spaces, as I like to keep the spaces clear for my girlfriend, friends, and family when they're allowed to visit again. Fast forward a month, and the handyman and painters are finished with the house, and the new neighbors started using the spaces. I told them this wasn't what we discussed and that they had to leave. They told me that the spaces are community spaces, and she and her husband could use them as I didn't need 4 spaces for myself. I told her to move the cars or I would have them towed. They moved their cars and didn't use the spaces anymore for a week. As soon as she parked her car there again, I immediately called a tow company, and half an hour later, her car got towed. The next day, she came up to me, asking me where her car went. I told her I had it towed because she parked in my front yard. My friend tells me I'm being a petty jerk for having her car towed, and I should apologize. My girlfriend tells me I did the right thing, as they would have probably claimed my entire front yard as their personal parking places if I didn't make a point out of it. So, am I the jerk here? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his neighbor? Please let us know.
You did the right thing, OP. You give a carrot an inch, she'll take a mile. Ask Reddit boy over here.
My boss told me to find another job, so I did. Earlier today, I was reading a story about a crappy manager that bullied someone into quitting their job. I decided to share a similar experience. Back when I was still working in HR, I got a great job offer. This was a publicly funded company with huge cultural impact, really the definition of an institution. Everyone who learned I worked there couldn't help but to feel slightly amazed at the discovery. Some people even rudely implying I had friends in the right places. Never mind, I was a recently graduated, clueless young man with nothing to my name. That was my first real job too, not counting internships or smaller summer jobs. As such, I really tried my best to be helpful and kind to everyone on my first year there, and maybe that's why I became a target. After I secured a permanent contract with them, with incredibly crappy pay and no benefits at all, I might add, one particular coworker got pretty salty about my position in the office, although for all intents and purposes, I was still beneath pretty much everyone else there. This culminated in getting a call from this person, 30 minutes after I had left work, asking about a pile of papers she couldn't find. I remembered I had actually kept those papers on my desk, and I tell her to go look there. I apologize profusely and ask her if she wants me to come back to help her deal with it. She simply says no and that everything is all right. Now, that was the type of coworker that always did the bare minimum and still whined about it every chance she had. I never thought much of it. After all, she was a mom, and as such, she probably was pretty tired all the time. But I never thought she would turn on me because she had to stay at work for 30 minutes looking for a pile of papers. Half the time, I would have had to stay 1 to 2 hours after work to deal with my workload, so I thought it was no big deal. The next day, I again apologized to my coworker, but immediately noticed something wasn't quite right about the way she was acting with me. Throughout the day, I noticed her going out of the office with coworkers, sending them messages, and letting out these poisonous little laughs to herself every time I opened my mouth to say something. From that day on, this was one of the people that decided to make my life a living heck. I made some friends in this place too. Some of them became really great friends that I still hang out with and treasure to this day. But for the most part, it was an absolute heck. Here are some of the things I experienced over my 3-year stay. Got one of the most important people in the company publicly shaming me for participating in an interview wearing sneakers. Keep in mind that no dress code was defined for interview or any other corporate event, and I had always worn sneakers. A sadistic manager who, on good days, would talk crap about everyone she had to work with, and on bad days, would downright bully me in front of other coworkers. A coworker who would often raise rumors about me based on nothing, the same who turned on me because of 30 extra minutes on the job. A coworker who, for no good reason, sprayed me and my friends with a fire extinguisher, and HR who refused to do anything about it, etc. I don't pretend that I was the perfect worker. I mean, it was my first job. I made a ton of mistakes, and I probably upset a lot of people. But I'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who could deal with this toxic workplace and keep their mental stability. All of this pushed me to a point of near nervous breakdown, and one day, I just couldn't take it anymore. It was a day just as any other. At some point after lunch, I came back into the office to find my coworker sitting at her desk all by herself. Weird, I thought. She usually came back from lunch way after I did. Obviously sulking, she acknowledges my presence by immediately accusing me of hiding papers to prevent her from doing her job. Keep in mind, it's been almost 3 years since she called me after work hours and our relationship soured. This day would be the climax of that seething hatred we had cultivated for one another. I shrug and tell her I have no idea what she's talking about, never seen such papers, and certainly have nothing to do with the situation. I sit down, also upset now, but ready to move on and not waste any more time on this subject. My manager comes in and notices something has happened. The tension is palpable. Before she has the chance to ask what's up, my coworker pipes up.
Well, you see, what's happening is that Kono Kermit Duh is a liar.
What? In all my 3 years there, I never raised my voice, never talked back, never showed a hint of defiance until that very moment. I can't deal with anyone calling me a liar. It's one of the things that makes me go absolutely insane with rage. I immediately cut her off and tell her how much of a toxic jerk she is. I wasn't nice or even professional about it, and I really don't regret it. I didn't use any bad words, but I was definitely very personal about the way I responded. I can see their surprise. They never thought I would fight back. They expected me to take it and shut up forever. Things go downhill from here for me. My jerk of a coworker gets transferred somewhere else, but I'm told I have to undergo behavioral training. For the first time in years, I'm not taking crap, and I let my manager know I'm not interested. I had been humiliated for 3 years and finally stood up for myself. I wasn't going to be punished for that. My boss calls me to her office, began asking weird questions like, "Are you happy here?" and "What do you want to do in the future?" I told her about my grievances and how toxic this work culture is. In no uncertain terms, she tells me, "You know, we have to renew your contract soon, but if you're not happy here, I would find a job somewhere else." What? I had given this company some of the best years of my youth. I worked for them day and night, going the extra mile, even when they didn't ask me to, for what amounted to be a little more than minimum wage. Their payback? Punishing me for standing up for myself once. Well, the problem for them is, I had been learning how to program while working. I would get off work late in the evening, go home, and drag my exhausted body to my laptop to study up to 4 or 5 hours of coding. I realized I really liked coding, like a lot. Unbeknownst to them, I had began taking small coding projects for no pay, as having other paid jobs was forbidden in this company, and soon I was thinking of launching a career as a web developer. My contract ended, and I expected to receive a call in 1 or 2 weeks to come by and sign the new contract. This was the usual process for workers like me. Weeks go by, and I honestly believe they just decided to not hire me back. Didn't bother me. After all, I was already looking for a new job before my contract was even over. 3 months later, I get a call from my manager.
Hi, Kono Kermit Duh. How are you? Listen, we got your new contract here. Why don't you come by to sign it? If you sign it today, we can have you back by Monday.
She goes on to tell me how much work there's been lately and how they really need me back ASAP. All the projects I had worked on were halted because no one else wanted to work on them. A quarter of a year after they dropped me with no word of hiring me back. At this point, however, I was getting plenty of interviews for IT companies who were genuinely interested in my skills and portfolio. Thank you, I'm not coming back. The silence on the other end of the call was so sweet. My manager asks me to pass by anyway. She would like a word with me, and I still had my personal belongings at my desk. I agreed, figuring this was the only chance I'd have to stick it back to them after 3 years of taking their crap. She sat me down with a distinguishedly saccharine attitude that she would seldom display while I was working for them. The whole meeting was essentially a desperate attempt to bring me back into the company and me refusing it at each turn.
That's okay, she said. What are you going to do then?
I told her I'd work as a programmer. My reply is met with laughter. I remain silent.
That's good, she continued. I'm sure you can do it, but you know, I would seriously consider staying with us.
I reiterated I'm not interested and even let her know I'm moving away in a couple of months. Again, she laughs at me. Apparently, my plans for the future were so extraordinarily out of my reach in her opinion that she just couldn't help but to laugh. Just a last little slap in the face. Finally, she asks,
"Why would you want to leave us?"
I shrugged, unable to contain my smile. You people told me to get a job if I wasn't happy here. I'm just following your suggestion. Much to my manager's chagrin, I did land a job in web development. And after I left this job because I wanted to immigrate, my employer liked my work so much, he asked me to keep working for them remotely until I found another job in my destination. I've been working as a web developer for 3 years now, and every single day I look back at my previous career and wipe the sweat off my forehead, knowing I dodged a lifetime of misery. As for my previous workplace, they're still going strong. After all, it is a huge institution, and my part in it wasn't that important. But my team was pretty badly hit. Without me, they couldn't perform interviews and keep some of their projects going. For a couple of months, the whole thing was hot garbage until they, unfortunately, hired another clueless recent graduate. But honestly, knowing those people have to wake up and go to work in the place that they have personally created feels like enough of a punishment for me. Hope they find the inner peace they want so badly. Entitled mom wants me to give her son an expensive Gundam kit for free. For context, I work at a store that specializes in Japanese imported items such as toys, gadgets, and electronics, and all of it is good quality for a good price. But sometimes we get imported very high-end stuff, so to compensate for how much the shipment cost, we have to boost the price. In this story, a whiny brat wants a Gundam building kit that is around $50 to $100, and I can't remember that part exactly. Cast: we've got entitled mother, we've got the bratty kid, we've got my manager, Jackson, and we've got me, Gas Mask Gary. Here's how it went down. I was at work, sketching and waiting for someone to come to my register. I doodle a lot, at home or on the job, as at the time, I was doing this job mid-high school to early college, where I majored in art, specifically cartoons and animation. And then, some arrogant-looking mother with bad fashion taste walks in with her bratty weeaboo son. I think nothing of it, as people like this walk in all the darn time. But things start getting bad when he whines about wanting one of the more high-end Gundam Figma build kits near the display shelf in the back. They come to the register after arguing over which one to get. They decided on a highly coveted Unicorn Gundam with a metallic yellow-gold look on the plastic. Entitled mom:
Hello there, sir. We would like to purchase this toy.
Me: okay, let me scan this for you. I proceed to do so, and it popped up as a low-end $15 product that looked similar but was obviously different. I had a look of confusion on my face. Entitled mom:
What's the darn holdup? It's my son's birthday, and I don't want to ruin it for him.
Me: well, this product has the wrong price tag. It's coming up as $15 instead of $40.
Well, it's just a toy. It's not worth much. Come on, just go with its current price.
Me: well, if I do, I'll get fired, and you might get arrested once my boss finds out. Entitled brat:
Mom, I want the cool robot.
Shut up, sweetie. Mommy's talking to the big greedy man here.
At this point, you could see how upset I was. See, what I did was I went to the shelf it was on and scanned the other box of the same kit, and what do you know? It was $40. So I told her and she flipped. She calls me some names that I definitely can't type out here. Entitled mom with boiling blood:
You jerk. You are ruining my little boy's special day. I just wanted to buy him a cool toy that he actually wants.
I just sat on my chair while she yelled at me, cranked up my tunes on my Bluetooth earbuds, and didn't listen. I wasn't going to take crap from her. Eventually, she left me alone and went back to the shelves. Minutes later, she leaves, but the alarm goes off. These stupid people tried to shoplift and got caught. They had taken the Gundam kit and were taken in by the cops. I don't know the rest because I wasn't there, but I haven't seen them since, so maybe they were banned. Speaking of Gundam, have you ever built any collectible items? If so, what kind? Please let us know.
Legos all day, bruh.
Am I the jerk for telling my sister's friends she inherited her house when she says she bought it? My dad passed too young. He was only 65, never got to enjoy retirement. Doctor said stress heart attack. He was bedridden, passed a week later. That was 6 years ago. I was 30 and well into my IT career. He knew he was dying, asked me if I needed anything material. I said no, I just want him to live. He couldn't give me that. My mom felt the same, didn't want to live alone, so she lives with her sister, also widowed. My sister was 34, divorced, 2 kids, struggling with money. Dad left her his house and, with mom's blessing, most of his money. He gave me a generous sum for my future family, enough to my mom for the rest of her life. Sister asked me how to invest. I advised her. Now she coasts off her interest. She blogs, identifies as a writer. She tells her tween kids about how she worked and saved for her house. I get that you want to make your kids value working hard, but when she says that stuff around me, I cringe. I'm not going to embarrass her in front of her own kids, though. She asked me to design her website. She's my sister, so of course I said I'd do it. On her About Me, she lists herself as a writer who raised 2 kids on her own. True, who is business savvy and bought a huge house in a tough market. No mention that our parents spent decades paying for it. I say, sis, this is mom and dad's house and they paid for it. But she just goes,
La 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 la, I'm not hearing you talk.
I'm thinking, whatever. I now have my own family, wife and a son who's 2 to worry about. One day, my sister throws a party to celebrate a self-published book about recipes. She invites me and my family and lots of her friends. So we're having a good time talking about this and that. Some of her friends talk to me and they tell me how amazing my sister is. No problem there. They say how she's a genius for balancing 2 kids and saving up to buy her huge house. Apparently, she had been parlaying the fact that our dad has passed to say my mom is also a single mom. All I say is, well, I grew up in this house too. My mom and dad bought it. He passed, and my mom agreed with my dad to leave it to her. My mom lives with her sister upstate. Several of her friends tell me about how my sister is so amazing to buy such a nice big house and juggle being a single mom. Often I just said, I grew up in this house too. Later on, my sister texts me the next day how I was a jerk for telling her friends that my dad willed her the house. I ask, why am I a jerk? I was not being malicious, I was being accurate. She says that our dad wouldn't mind, and also she says property tax is huge, so technically she's paying for the house and should be credited for that. She says I should stop saying she inherited the house when people ask. I say I will refuse to say anything when asked about the house, but that I will not say inaccurate things. She says I'm being a jerk and a hater. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his sister? Please let us know. I really think they should have left the house to him, to be honest. In which I take umbrage at the rude man on the phone. Warning, there's no hero in this story. A guy was a jerk to me, and I was a bigger jerk back. Honestly, I probably went too far. One day, I got a sales call from this company I'm investing with, trying to sell me more investment. Wasn't against it, so I let the sales guy talk, asked my questions, then told him I wasn't interested once it became obvious it wasn't what I wanted. This guy was persistent though. He kept asking why I wasn't interested, then told me he was going to email me a bunch of documentation to help me make my decision. So he emails me some stuff that I don't read and calls me again the next day. I tried to politely tell him that this was a waste of both of our time, but it then got weird. Let's call the guy Jack. Jack. Did you even read any of the stuff I sent you yesterday? Me. No, like I told you, I'm not interested. So, you're a liar then? Excuse me? He went on to complain because, according to him, I told him I was going to invest in his offer, but then pulled out at the last minute. I told him I didn't say anything of the sort. I simply let him make his pitch, then told him I wasn't interested. Just because he pushes and follows up against my will doesn't magically change any of this. Secondly, this call is crazy unprofessional. How are you going to survive in sales if you start yelling at everyone who says no to you? The guy gets really heated at this point. I think my guy was holding in some serious frustration because he unloaded a bunch of insults on me in a wildly disproportionate way. In response, I start needling and insult him back, infuriating him further, culminating in him reading my address over the phone to intimidate me and making threats about how he's going to come get me. It wasn't my address, it was my office address, but the intent was there. I was upset after this, and not being able to let it go, I weighed my options. Sending in a complaint was the easiest option and would almost certainly have led to him getting punished for it, but it was also way too formal and impersonal. For the sake of my ego, I needed the satisfaction of actually delivering a personal blow. So, knowing what offices and sales teams are like, I decided to embarrass him. I run my own business, and we send a lot of cold emails. As such, I have access to a bunch of tools and processes to gather email addresses from a given business domain. I get to work, find about 60 company emails, and bulk send the following email to everyone on this list except for Jack. Hi there, I'm trying to reach Jack in sales. Please forward this to him if you know him, as I don't have his email. Hi Jack, just following up on our phone call from earlier today. The one where you called me all those names because I didn't want to give you money, then read out my address over the phone and threatened to hurt me. I know it's frustrating when you don't make a sale, but whining about it and insulting the lead isn't going to help you. Here's a YouTube link where I uploaded a recording of your rant for your convenience. Link. I thought maybe you can go through it and learn how to control your emotions better in the future. Thanks. Note, please don't read this or view the link if you're not Jack in sales. I timed the email to hit everyone's inbox around 8 a.m. This way it would be at the top of everyone's inbox as they started their day, and there wouldn't be any time for anyone higher up to become aware of the email and wipe it from everyone's inboxes before it's seen, just in case that was a possibility. Over the next 24 hours, I got a bunch of emails from random people asking if the recording is real. A couple from people saying they can't believe he said that stuff. Another threat from Jack. And an urgent message from my regular account manager asking if I can please set up a time for a call to discuss my recent experience. Also, the YouTube upload had almost 100 views.
And that is why you always record your phone calls.
I guess I'm the Pokemon master now? This happened back when I was a kid. I, 16 female, and my brother, 13 male, have been crazy into Pokemon since it came out. We basically grew up with it. Back then, Toys R Us used to host official Nintendo-sponsored Pokemon League events each Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon, and we always went. My brother and I even started showing up early to help the organizer, a designated Toys R Us employee, and setting up. Let's call him Mario. It was easy. Go into the back employee-only room, grab tables, chairs, pens, promo cards to pass out, badges to award, and new badge books for the newcomers. Now, Mario didn't know anything about Pokemon, but my brother and I were super used to the league from when we attended at card shops, so we let him know what was what when he didn't know what to do. He quickly just pushed more and more of these tasks onto me. For your information, I was happy to take on the duties. Pretty soon, my brother and I were kind of running the event, and he'd disappear for most of the 3 hours. No one seemed to notice or care though, since I was doing a great job and all of the kids were having a great time. Also, I was darn near unbeatable, and in the world of card games, that makes you the boss. That's just how it works. My brother and I noticed that Mario hadn't shown up in like 3 weeks. Not that we really cared. We just went into the back room by ourselves, carried the tables and chairs out, passed out the promo cards to each attendee, stamped their badge books, presided over matches, gave awards, etc. Then at noon cleaned up, took the tables and chairs back, neatly stacked and hung around until our mom came to pick us up. So on the 3rd week after noticing that Mario hadn't shown up, another employee, let's call him Rex, finds my brother and me as we're putting stuff away and asks, "Are you the ones that have been running the Pokemon thing the last few weeks?" "Yes," we answer, and you can visibly see a look of, "Oh no," on his face, like he wasn't sure what to do now. So he stands there thinking for a bit and then asks, "How old are you?" 15, I answer. "Okay, don't go anywhere." He leaves and comes back and gets basic info from me, like name, address, etc. Bless my naive little heart, I answer everything. Then we leave. Next Saturday, business as usual. The following Saturday, Rex shows up after we get done putting away all of the stuff and hands me an envelope. Inside is a paycheck for like $130. It was back pay for all of the hours I had worked. Turns out Rex was the manager and he'd been getting so many compliments from the parents about their employee that runs the Pokemon League that he had been trying to find that employee for weeks, but all his employees kept saying, "It's not me." Apparently, it was a complete mystery to everyone how the tables and chairs were being put out and being put back and who was actually running the event. Remember, my brother and I were just another pair of kids in a crowd of over 25, ages 6 to 30 of random players. As far as the Toys R Us staff was concerned, it was a ghost running the events. And that's how I accidentally got my first job, because parents just assumed I worked there and the manager ran with it. Oh, as for Mario, I never found out what happened to him, but I never saw him again. And also, to this day, I'm 38, I still have it in my resume that my first job was as a Pokemon master. Strange thing is, not a single employee has ever questioned it, and I've gotten some pretty high-level jobs. Speaking of Pokemon, who's your favorite Pokemon of all time? Please let us know.
Restroom for the win.
I want to keep my checks. This happened a couple of times over many years. After I had scanned her 1,000 items and hit total, then she decides to start digging in her purse to find her checkbook, and after a few minutes finds it and then started to slowly fill it out. Of course, a line has built and people looked like their life was slowly draining out of them. I felt it too. I ran the check through the register. It scanned it or whatever, then put it in the bottom of the cash drawer. I hand her the receipt, then she held her hand back out. I'm not entirely sure why, because I wanted her to go, not give me a high five. She just ahem at me and said,
Where is my check?
I look at her confused. In the drawer where I just put it after the transaction?
I want my check back,
She yelled. Ma'am, we have to keep the check in to deposit in the bank, in case there are any transaction errors. She was shaking her head no the entire time.
No, I have to get it back. Otherwise, somebody could steal my identity.
I tried to assure her that from the register, we put it in the safe at night, then in the morning, and then the armed guards take it to the bank for deposit. She would not accept it and said that if she could not get it back, then she would return her purchase and get it back to buy things elsewhere. This must have been a power play for her, but she messed up. You see, I was on my last week at that job and was ready to stop giving a hoot. I asked for her receipt, which I got, pulled up her transaction, and hit void previous transaction. I grabbed her check, the receipt, and the void receipt and handed it to her. There, I have voided the transaction and returned your check. Good luck at the next store. I then started removing her items from the bags and making a stack beside me on the floor. She looked dumbfounded, jaw dropped.
No, I purchased those. Those are mine.
I kindly, with the most customer service voice I could muster, replied, You told me that if you could not have your check back, you would buy things elsewhere. And I had already told you we were not able to give it back. So I voided your purchase, and now you have your check back. I looked at the next person in line. I can help the next person. That beautiful customer stepped forward right next to the lady before lockdown and started a conversation about some cereal she bought. By that time, the manager had come over and the lady began yelling at him. He ended up ringing her items back up in the aisle next to mine, and she paid by check but was again unable to keep the check. I could hear it all well. In fact, half the aisle was watching their show of an interaction. The best part was when she was demanding her check back, again, he asked if she wanted him to void it out so she could go somewhere else. She nearly exploded, ripped the receipt out of his hand, threw the bags in her cart, and breaking things by the sound, stormed out yelling. The cherry on top was that on our way out, she turned back to yell more at us and ran into the doorframe with her cart as she was looking back, not sure where she was going. Laughter erupted from a few kids nearby. Great day. I got talked to, but I was almost out, so yeah. Mortgage lender told me, don't sign it then. He personally lost $9,000 and lost $20,000 for his company. I'm currently trying to buy a house and was given the loan agreement with the fee sheet and all of that. They were overpriced by around $6,000 more than all of their competitors. I originally was dealing with one guy who was nice, then turns out he's not the one that does the loans. It's another guy who is the biggest jerk. I didn't like him from the first time I spoke to him because he asked for a number to call for my employment. And I said, who are you going to call? So I can give him that number. And he tells me, whoever picks up the phone. Yeah, no duh. Anyways, he wants me to pay him $9,000 cash and a lending fee up front. Most places add it onto your loan, so you pay it over the life of the loan, and it only adds about $20 to your monthly payment, which makes a lot more sense than having to pay this one guy $9,000 cash plus another $11,000 to his company for paperwork and stuff. I called him about the fees, and that wasn't even the one I was questioning. I was questioning a $200 credit report. They're usually around $30, at most $80. I said, I'm not going to pay $200 for a credit report. So he said, yeah, it could be $30, it could be $80, could be $200. I don't know, so I have to estimate high. I said, I'm not going to sign something that says I agree to pay $200 for a credit report. In a scoffing head voice, he said, don't sign it then. Obviously, I'm not signing it, and that's why I'm calling you, because if I don't sign it, we can't do the loan. So I just said okay, and we got off the phone. I immediately start getting calls from the owner of the place, who was the original one I had dealt with, saying, OMG, what happened? I was next to him and I heard the whole thing. No, he didn't mean it like that. And I hear him in the background trying to explain himself. Anyways, I got another guy to do it within minutes of getting off the phone with them. He is wonderful and sweet and nothing like that. And I love that I don't have to pay him $9,000 up front, so my total costs will be less than half of the other people. And he's so nice. The other place is still harassing me because I dropped the deal with them, and they're begging me to sign the papers. Anyways, Now they owe me my $5,000 deposit, and I can't wait to send them the cancellation of contract and have them give it back to me. Karen cousin tried to steal my boyfriend. I, 18, male, have been with my boyfriend, 18, male, and we've been together since May of 2019. Last year, when everything started to shut down, my parents offered to let my cousin, Amy, 18, female, stay with us as she is immunocompromised, and her parents are both doctors, where mine are both able to work from home. Everything was fine for a while. We mostly kept to ourselves, did our schoolwork, and spent time online with our friends. A few weeks in, I was sat in the kitchen on FaceTime with my boyfriend. Usually I would have done this in my room, but my dad's office is next to my room and he was on an important work call. She came in to get something and must have glanced over my shoulder and seen him. When I had ended the call, she asked who he was. I told her he was my boyfriend and she just made the comment that he was cute. At the time, it didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal. But after that, whenever I tried to have a call with my friends or my boyfriend, she would come into my room. She tried to play it off as wanting to ask me a question, but it was happening too often, and she would keep asking, "Don't I get to say hi?" which I found odd. We go to different schools, and she had never met my friends or shown any interest in them before this point. And if my phone rang while we were in the same room, she would always ask if it was the cute boyfriend, and she started making comments about how she wished she had met him first. I asked her to stop as it was making me feel uncomfortable. It got worse. She found him on Facebook and started sending flirty messages to him. He blocked her and she made a second account and continued until he blocked her again. She then got into my phone and found his number and started texting and calling him. She would leave voicemails and it was always about how good she would be as his girlfriend and how he should leave me for her and everything she would do for him. He blocked her number. I told my parents what she was doing and showed them the proof, and they told her that she had to leave because she was making me so uncomfortable. I've not spoken to her since. My extended family are now trying to make plans for this summer, hoping everyone can get together. I'm refusing to go to anything she's at because I feel she would just try again. Everyone except my parents are telling me that I'm ruining the plans just to be spiteful, as she has apologized. A non-sincere apology when she realized my parents were serious about her going back home. I feel like a jerk because it means we can't have any family plans and I'm essentially making everyone choose between us. But I don't want to be around her if she's going to keep making me uncomfortable. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you go to the family events if you knew the cousin would be there or not? Please let us know.
I would go, and I'd remind my cousin of how stupid she looked when she tried to steal my boyfriend. I'd let everyone else know about it too.
Make my job harder because I got promoted? No pay raise for you. I was offered a job role in mid-2019 in middle management at an aged care service. The GM that hired me worked with me previously, and we both had similar vision and expectations. He helped me get a really good job with his reference, and he ended up moving to another organization as a general manager, which was well-deserved. A year later, he called me up, and he had a role for me and wanted me to come across to his agency. The team I ended up managing had a senior employee we will call Karen, a woman in her 40s, an actual Karen haircut, and large rectangle spectacles with the reddest lipstick and smelled like a department store fragrance section, who claimed to know everything and had been in the organization for 9 years. She was expecting to be given the role due to her seniority and was highly agitated once she found out that the GM had brought in an ex-colleague to fill the role. Karen was toxic and didn't take well to not automatically getting the management role, but also to me putting in KPIs and having clear expectations around the work which didn't exist prior. Her attitude towards me was nothing but disgusting and provided myself with nothing but resentment from the moment I walked through the door. One of the first conversations I had with Karen that never left me was when she told me,
"You don't deserve this role. You haven't earned it."
That sat with me for a while and played with my self-confidence, as this was my first management position where I was managing a large team. Our team was mainly young and easily influenced. Karen had been whispering rubbish into their ears and manipulating them into thinking I was out to replace them by implementing unrealistic KPIs. They were actually super easy. She also was BFFs with the state manager Sharon, which gave her a lot of protection. But luckily, our team didn't fall under the state manager's department reporting line. Sharon was known as being ruthless in her department, and everyone was too scared to oppose her. My revenge came through circumstance and a little through my own planning. I was enjoying the role, but have to admit that Karen made my job really difficult. Having an internal jerk in my team hurt morale, but also productivity. Karen didn't see the need for one-on-one catch-ups because apparently she knew more than me and it was a waste of her time. Everything I discussed was met with an excuse, rebuttal, or denial. I documented everything, and I knew she wouldn't read it, and she blindly signed it afterwards without reading it because it came back to my desk within seconds of me handing it to her. At the time, we were introducing working from home as we were running out of space in the office. All she kept saying is she wanted to work from home because of time, public transport, and the fact she probably wanted to do nothing and have no accountability. She would be the last person I would want working from home, as she is always blaming the computer for being slow, the internet, her keyboard not working, her VPNs not connecting, her database not logging in. She would be a nightmare and absolutely take the cake. Most likely just smoke all day and think this is the life. I provided feedback in our one-on-one catch-ups along the lines of smoke breaks are to be taken during your morning break, lunch, and afternoon break, not every hour for 15 minutes, leaving early without notice, and about her phone metrics around picking up the phone. We weren't a call center, but let's just say she had a 5% pickup rate, and she would be getting around 40 calls a day. Answering phones was beneath her, and the team was starting to get really annoyed because she was always smoking, never answering the phones, and always being negative. My team, God bless them, started to see her for who she was. Historically, the company had previously given everyone exceeds expectations on their annual performance review to keep a happy culture, which would ultimately lead to a remuneration increase and employees having a false expectation of rewarding subpar performance. Because she had a 5% pickup rate on the phones, took more breaks than anyone else, and did less work than anyone else, had a 50% attendance rate for team meetings, and also didn't listen, I gave her an unsatisfactory as an overall score, which was the lowest. Karen missed out on her RAM increase and was warned that she would be put on performance management if she didn't start showing improvement. I don't think Karen had ever been spoken to like that at work and actually given hard-hitting feedback. Karen was angry. Karen took me to HR, claiming that I was bullying, saying I gave her a unsatisfactory out of spite. I overenthusiastically provided the 15-odd one-on-one documents that we had both signed discussing her poor habits around breaks, punctuality, and KPIs. Karen was told politely that this was not bullying, but me managing and setting expectations for performance. This wasn't the last time she took me to HR, but I would say I had about 5 different discussions from HR regarding bullying of her. They were all her word versus mine, but that time I had proof and could refute her bullying claims. She read every one-on-one doc from that moment. A few days later, I was in the toilet washing my hands, but I could hear people out in the foyer waiting for the elevator. It was Karen and Sharon, the state manager. Karen was mocking and tearing me to shreds, and Sharon wasn't happy with the GM at the time either. I remember Karen very clearly saying, "OP is GM's mutt," and they all laughed. Apparently, I did hear all of the GM's dirty work, which I reflect on now and laugh, as all I was doing was setting expectations to which we were to work under. Karen from that day always muttered to me as Muttley behind my back. She even changed my name in her phone as Muttley. My team were providing me feedback that they are getting sick of her bad-mouthing me, which I really appreciated as they had matured a lot, and we were starting to build a strong culture aside from the jerks. General manager called me into the office and advised me that my team, 15, would be working from home to free up desks as we were not essential to be in the office. This was before lockdown. The only catch is that one team member had to remain in the office in case someone walked in off the streets and needed information or other unlikely scenarios where someone administrative/intake had to be there. My revenge. Like clockwork, Karen would always take cigarette breaks at around 10 and would be gone anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes and would always be late or miss meetings if they were scheduled in that time, as it was her time to have a break with Sharon, the state manager. From our one-on-one catch-ups, the only thing she ever contributed positively for her development or future goals was the fact that she wanted to work from home. I came up with the perfect plan relying on her behaviors for this to work. I scheduled a meeting at 10 a.m. via email and requested all my team that it be compulsory to attend due to important changes and CC'd everyone important from our department into the email and invite. The day comes, 10 a.m., the meeting has started, and you guessed it, she was out having a smoke. I asked everyone, who would like to work from home? And everyone put up their hand. I advised that there needs to be one person who does remain working from the office and asked if anyone wanted to volunteer. No one volunteered. I smiled with joy, as I had given forewarning that this was an important meeting and the GM and another GM of a brother department were also in attendance, giving Karen no hope of arguing. She came in 15 minutes late with a coffee in her hand just as we were wrapping up and was wondering why everyone was so happy. One of the team said, "We get to work from home." She smiled and was like, "Great, when do we start working from home?" I looked up and grinned. Because you didn't attend the meeting, all the available working from home spots were allocated. You'll be required to still come into the office. She was livid and even threw her pin that was tucked behind her ear at the ground.
Why didn't you come and get me? You knew I wanted to work from home,
she spat. I discussed in front of the team, the GMs, and Karen that it was compulsory to attend this meeting, which was clearly stated, and I'm not responsible for the time management of your day as you're an adult. Her BFF Sharon also received some bad news. Her position was made redundant and was demoted to another department in office, which meant Karen's biggest ally was no longer around to support her. The team transitioned into working from home, and I still came into the office. Why did I come into work? Because I wanted to keep Karen accountable by sitting next to her every day. The team took to working from home so well, and productivity went through the roof. I still remember sitting next to her and saying good morning in a nice loud voice to her. Karen had no one to manipulate, no one to complain to, and no one to whisper poison to about me anymore. Well, no one that cared. As I mentioned earlier, she used to call me Muttley behind my back. So on my 3 screens, I put the background as Muttley, and my work mobile ringtone was now Muttley's laugh. She would have heard Muttley's laugh 20 times per day. As expected, I saw her on a job website looking for jobs and blatantly not caring if I saw. I got a phone call from my previous employer, Megan, who I was still on good speaking terms with, and Megan asked if I worked with a Karen. I said I did, and Megan told me that Karen had applied for a role at Happy Care, not real name, asked me to speak about Karen's character, and wondered why I wasn't listed as a reference. We actually caught up for a drink, and I told Megan the whole story of how Karen was lazy, a manipulator, and just not a nice person. Karen was applying for a management position, and I advised heavily against hiring Karen. Megan called Karen right there and then, and asked about her references and her current supervisor. She discussed that her manager was her BFF Sharon, the former state manager, and was a great mentor, but she was outgrowing the role and the opportunity to grow was limited. Megan told her that she is not going to offer her an interview, let alone the role, as she was not transparent about her work history and falsifying referees. I can just imagine how confused Karen would have been. The next morning, I sat down and told Karen, "Megan from Happy Care says hello." Karen just stared at her keyboard wide-eyed and not saying a word. Karen ended up finding another job just before lockdown hit. They never called me for a reference check. For her departing gift, I made a Muttley, "We will miss you" card that the whole team signed. I wanted to make one where you open it up and he laughs, but Karen was not worth the $45 it required to create it. No one actually wrote anything meaningful other than, "All the best in your new role." We had cake and virtual drinks for Karen's goodbye. Karen and I were sitting next to each other, zooming the rest of the team, and Karen left about 10 minutes in. I walked her out, took her pass, and wished her all the best. I started working from home the very next day, and still am to this day. The sweetest part of this story, the most satisfying part of this saga, is that her new job was made redundant because of lockdown, and she reapplied for her old job back. We were not actually hiring, but I made an exception and made Karen interview via Zoom with my 21C, whom happened to be one of the young staff she used to talk crap to me about, and clued on early that Karen was vile. We started the interview, and she couldn't have been more sweet, nice and two-faced. Her face was still as antagonizing as ever, and I could smell her perfume through the computer. It was still as offensive as it was in person. The interview was over in 5 minutes. I waited an hour and called Karen. "You don't deserve this role. You haven't earned it." Edit. 1. Thanks for all the awards. It appears from the comments that most people are pro-revenge, and the other half are pro-me being the bad manager. Probably can agree that I was petty at some stage, but this was over the course of 18 to 20 months, so a lot of the stuff that didn't get written happened. I'll wear people labeling me a bully for those specific circumstances, but Karen was put on performance management and then passed, would slip back again because someone complained about her behavior, then I would raise it. I didn't micromanage her until we were both the only ones working from the office. She would have done nothing. For all of you questioning my management skills, the team is awesome. The culture is awesome. For change management to occur, you have to set expectations for performance, behavior, and excellence. Karen was threatened by all of this and didn't want to come to the table. Simple as that. 2. The previous manager was an old friend of Karen's and had allowed her behavior for years as it was the norm. Previous manager filled Karen's head full of false expectations, and Karen got a lot of bad habits from previous manager over the years. Over 10 people interviewed for the role, including Karen. I was the right fit for what GM wanted going forward. Karen expected it because she had been there the longest and was not selected because her workplace behaviors had been identified long before I started working there. 3. Our key performance indicators were based around customer service metrics, such as pickup rate, service rate, and handling time. We also had KPIs around meeting attendance. Because we were a medium to large team and some of the roles require you to be out on the road, there were targets around attendance for team meetings. No one got 100% back then, but 50% or less was terrible. Keeping up to date with online training was another big one. 4. Commenting on her appearance gives the reader a better understanding of what we were working with. With so much work-related trauma around false allegations and constant defiance, these are the things you remember about a person. 5. The words she said, and I quoted back, are as clear in my head as the day she first said them to me. It took me months to get my confidence back from that comment. 6. Former employer Megan called wanting to know if I knew her, as she knew I also worked in the same company. She didn't call for a reference check. Our offices were not too far away and we caught up for coffee. Nothing illegal from where I'm from. She did falsify her references as she had never been supervised or worked under Sharon. Well, what do you think? Is OP a mean bully or did Karen get what she deserved? Please let us know.
I think Karen got what she deserved.
You want the police involved? Okie dokie. So, the day after Christmas, about 10 years ago, my brother called me up and asked me for some assistance setting up some of his new computer equipment. He lived down the road from a store that specialized in discount china, so naturally it was extremely busy. Busy as in cars were parked everywhere, including on the grass in front of the store, and it was impossible to see around the corner if someone wanted to pull out of the furthest exit. Unfortunately, the speed limit, 50 miles per hour, is also extremely high on the road as well, even if you have to really try to accelerate to get to 50 miles per hour by the time you pass the store. So I decided to play it safe and was doing roughly half the speed limit, perhaps 30 miles per hour, while going around the corner of the store. Even at this speed, of course, some guy decided to pull out without checking, and I couldn't stop in time to avoid hitting him. Now, I was driving an older Mitsubishi that already had some damage, and he had a small dent in his fender. And come on, it's still Christmas, right? So I get out of the car, take a look at the damage, and turn around to see a furious, older, red-faced gentleman in front of me. Right after I tell him that it doesn't really look like much damage, so there's no need to contact the police, he proceeds to scream in my face about how I was speeding and this is all my fault. Oh no, honey. A young woman driving by herself may appear to be easily intimidated, but I was trying to be nice. If you want the police involved, let's do it, buddy. I called the non-emergency line, explained there was a very minor car accident and that the other driver was insisting that it was my fault, so I would feel better if the police were involved. The dispatcher got my information, stopped for a moment, and then quietly thanked me for calling the appropriate number. 911 was hardly necessary, and then told me that she also felt it would be safer for me if the police were dispatched. After a 30-minute wait, an officer showed up to the scene. I, not being a total moron, sat quietly in my car and waited for him to come over to me. The other driver felt it was necessary to leap out of his vehicle and run over to the officer and start screaming and gesturing wildly. I didn't catch what was said, but I did see the look on the cop's face, and I was getting more and more amused. After being clearly told to get back into his car, the cop came over to me and asked me what happened. I told him what was going on, and that not only had I not deliberately sped up to go the speed limit, I had actually slowed down because of how busy the business was. He nodded and went back to measure the skid marks on the road and confirmed he believed I was actually doing about 25 and complimented my thinking on safe driving in this specific situation. He then proceeded to write the other driver a ticket, and the other driver pulled out of the parking lot a second time with his window down, giving me the bird. At this point, the cop came over to me explained that he wrote it up as the other driver's fault for more than $1,000 due to the damage on his fender. He also stated that, "Darling, I don't do this often, but I believe you should take that man's insurance company for every dime you can get. Thanks for insisting. We call the police." Make me hourly instead of salary because you're afraid I'll stop selling after I hit my commission cap? Okay. Years ago, I was an inside sales rep for a simultaneously large and tiny company in a niche market. The quotes are because it was at least equally outside sales. I just didn't go outside except to smoke. I've since quit. They had about 50 branches across the country of various sizes. The smallest was literally one guy who processed local orders and used hotshots for delivery. The largest had about 50 employees. I made 6 for my branch. I was literally the first salesman with a background in anything resembling sales that my branch had ever hired. They had always hired the least socially awkward industry professionals they could prior to me, and they had had their CSR doing the selling for over a year until I came on, so expectations were high. When they hired me, we had somewhat heated negotiations over the comp plan. It was a $42,000 base salary plus commission with a $56,000 OTE and $65,000 cap. I asked what I was meant to do after I hit the cap, to which they replied, "Continue to do your job," as if I wasn't going to have a problem with generating new business for free. I said that I was going to need a bonus structure beyond the cap if they wanted me to do any more hunting after that point. I made it clear that I'd service my accounts when they called, but I wanted to be clear that they were going to be disappointed if they expected me to make outbound calls looking for new business after I had maxed my comp plan, and that I'd definitely enjoy the extra time at home with my family over the holidays. They said they understood, and we went through the onboarding. I worked almost exactly 40 hours for almost 2 months, early October to early December, before I had jury duty and missed a day. My check was about $150 light compared to what it had been, so I complained to payroll. Benefits kicked in at 90 days. That's when I found out I was making $21 an hour and was not, in fact, pulling a salary. Presumably, this was to force me into the office, as we didn't have remote access to the local network that logged our hours, just the ordering/inventory software. I didn't even get a prorated Christmas bonus because that counts as benefits, and you have to work 90 days to receive those. Cue malicious compliance. I discovered that if I left the house 30 minutes early, my 80-minute commute would take less than 25. So instead of showing up around 8:30 and chilling in my car for a bit, so I was working at 9, I was there at 7 with the warehouse guy sending emails. I started working through lunch as I ate at my desk, as opposed to burning an hour off campus or in the break room. I didn't even realize I was losing an hour a day to lunch. I also discovered that if I stayed till 6:30, I'd get home by 7, as opposed to leaving a little after 5 and getting home around 6:30. So I spent an extra 5 hours a week away from home and worked an extra 22 compared to the 35 I was getting paid for before I figured it out. With the overtime, I was clocking north of $2,000 more than intended every month. And oddly enough, no one even noticed until the internal auditor verified W-2s and noticed that I made significantly more than the branch manager. I didn't hit my commission cap until late November, so I spent the rest of the year training with the tech and/or the warehouse guy. Both of them smoked. They tried to put me on the same salaried comp plan I had originally agreed to, but it was enough of a pay cut to qualify for constructive dismissal, so I got to quit and still collect unemployment for a month before I found another gig. Am I the jerk for failing a student and causing him to repeat 7th grade? I'm a middle school teacher. These days, we only have online school, and knowing how bad virtual learning can get, I try to meet with each of my students one-on-one online on a weekly basis. During this time, I would go over homework with my students and give them feedback on it. I have one grade 7 student, Zach, who forgets to do his homework on an almost weekly basis. Every week I meet with him, he tells me that he forgot to do his homework but promises to make up for it next week. However, he never does. I tried to work with him on ways he could remember to do his homework and even got his parents involved. However, it appears that nothing works. Homework is not part of our students' final grades, so I can't really dock marks for it. We only grade our students on their test marks. Unfortunately, Zach's marks have been quite poor as well, and he has a D+ in math. Passing grade is C-. When a student is on the cusp of passing, the school tells us that it will be based on our discretion on whether the student can pass or not, and that they will listen to our recommendation at the end of the year. Personally, I believe that Zach is very capable of learning new things, but often gets distracted by other things and forgets to do his homework. As such, I believed that Zach deserved to pass the course if he could show me that he was willing to work for it. During our scheduled meeting, I got Zach and his parents with him on the call. I told them that Zach was failing math, but I was willing to give him an extra assignment to boost his grade. I gave him the assignment, which was a 2-page math worksheet covering everything we did this year, and told him that he had 1 week to complete it and hand it in, and if he got more than 60% of the answers correct, he would pass. On our next meeting, I asked Zach to give me his homework. Zach then sheepishly told me that he completely forgot about his homework. Because of this, I told him that he would fail the course and sent an email to our school principal recommending that. The principal then asked me if I was sure, since Zach was failing another subject as well, and if he failed math, he would be held back a grade. I told the principal that I was sure, and that Zach did not meet my expectations for passing. So because of me, Zach has to repeat 7th grade. I'm not sure if I did the right thing, since Zach was clearly able to put in the work, as I've seen him do so during class, but just didn't have the discipline to do so. Well, what do you think? Was the teacher the jerk here or not? Please let us know.
I want to know why those parents aren't making that kid do his homework.
In 2020, I destroyed a handful of Christmases for a handful of families. This year, I will destroy even more. This story is a little different than the usual. It's also long because I don't have people to vent to. I'm a manager at a local barbecue chain with 3 restaurants in town, some franchises in a couple different states, and a booming nationwide food shipping system. I worked in our drive-thru and our dining room for years, and last year got the manager promotion in our office. So now I mostly deal with taking call-in orders, catering, paperwork, and inputting shipping orders. Our shipping is bonkers, okay? We input over 3,000 orders per week for a whole month and a half during Christmas, and our plant was working overtime every day just to get them out. We have a deal with a popular shipping company for some discounts, shipping prices, and guaranteed 2-day delivery since it's food, and generally it goes really smooth and there's little issue. Well, near Christmas, the lockdown medicine was shipped out on an emergency level. The shipping company we work with had its headquarters here in town, and over half of their fleet was reallocated to shipping the medicine overnight without warning. For us, this meant that every shipping order we'd put in for the week before Christmas got pushed back by a week. December 24th, the last day orders could be received, was a Thursday, so roughly 5,000 orders had to be delivered in 3.5-day period. This made for some unfortunate threat-level midnight unplugging my phone just to get a moment of peace, holiday-ruining craziness. A lot of customers were super understanding, more than willing for me to push their delivery back with no guarantee it'll get there before Christmas because of the circumstances. I'm grateful to them. However, as usual, there were 37 instances, I counted, where someone said I ruined their Christmas dinner and presents, and in one instance, their sanity. Trust me, customer, right back at you. Some were casual, forget yous. I don't know what we're going to eat for Christmas dinner now. Or,
Can't you just ship it through a different company?
2 interactions have stuck with me. 1. Order going up north. It's December 24th, and she hasn't got it yet and is leaving town in a couple of hours. Understandably frustrating. She's the first customer I'm talking to at 7:30 in the morning. Customer.
It was supposed to be delivered yesterday, and I'm leaving for another state in 2 hours. This is my family's Christmas dinner. What are we supposed to do if it's not here before I leave?
Me. I'm so sorry, ma'am. When I pull up the tracking information, it says it's out for delivery, but I don't have a specific time listed here. Once we send it to shipping, it's out of our hands.
Out of your hands? So you just hand it to the company and hope for the best? What kind of business model is that?
Me. This is where I explain the shipping delay reasoning.
Well, that's just ridiculous. I didn't order medicine. I ordered barbecue for my family. So what? If it comes in after I leave, it's just going to sit on my porch, rotting for a week?
Me. Unfortunately, I can't say what time it will be delivered, but if it's after the time you leave, we can issue you a reshipment for January or a complete refund. I apologize for the issue, ma'am, but this is the most I can do for you at the moment.
So, I'm not going to be here when it's delivered, and it's going to sit rotting on my front porch? You can't see any more information on when I'll receive it?
Unfortunately, it only says by the end of the day.
So it's going to sit at my house for a whole week, rotting? Someone is going to see that and break into my house.
Me. Excuse me?
Someone is going to see this food rotting on my front porch and rob me because they can tell no one is home. My family is going to get robbed over Christmas because of you!
I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed silent.
So when I get back from my mother's and my house is robbed, it's going to be because of you and your crappy company. What's your name? I want to make sure I get the right person on the police report.
I give her my name, she yells at me a little bit more, and I hang up. It's 7 in the morning, dog. 20-ish minutes later, I see her number calling again and let it ring because I don't want to be yelled at again. She calls again, so I take a deep breath and pick up cheerfully.
The shipping company says they can't track my package without a shipping number. Give that to me.
Me. Okay, let me get that pulled up for you. I can hear her talking to someone else while I'm pulling her order back up, and I hear her call me stupid and laugh. Whatever. I get the tracking info pulled up and give her the tracking number, which she makes me repeat twice slowly.
Great. Now, can you tell me why you didn't think to give that to me the first time I called?
Me. Ma'am, if you requested it, I would have handed it over at the beginning. I apologize that we had to speak again.
You should have known I would have needed the number. Are you just stupid?
I don't say anything.
Right. Well, I hope I ruined your Christmas like you ruined mine.
Hangs up. Karen coworker messed with a customer's food. I told our boss. I work as a server at a popular chain restaurant. Last Saturday, it was a very stressful day as we were extremely busy. One of my coworkers, let's call her Tanya, was in an especially bad mood due to the amount of customers assigned to her section. The issue started when one of the customers ordered chicken strips with buffalo sauce on the side. As Tanya was walking with her tray of food, the sauce dish tipped over and spilled some buffalo sauce over the customer's fries and baked potato. I'm guessing she didn't think it was a big deal to have some hot sauce on your potatoes, so she brought it to the customer anyway. Well, the customer eventually called her back and asked for new fries and a new potato because they didn't want buffalo sauce all over their food. Tanya came back to the kitchen unreasonably upset. She was complaining about spoiled people, wasting food, extra work, and things like that. The cook made a new plate of food, and as Tanya was walking out of the kitchen, she stuck out her tongue and spit little flecks of spit all over the customer's food. I was shocked because I had never actually seen someone do that in real life. I thought that kind of thing only happened in movies and TV shows. I was even more surprised that she did it during lockdown. At the end of my shift, I told my boss what I saw, and he had a talk with Tanya afterwards. Now, everyone I work with knows that I did this, since my boss told Tanya that I saw her spit on the food. They're all calling me a snitch. Tanya herself calls me the snitch if she ever has to refer to me, and no longer speaks to me at all. I believe even my boss isn't happy that I snitched, though he hasn't said anything directly. I just feel a whole different vibe from him now. It's gotten to the point where I basically lost all of my work friends due to snitching. I'm not sure they will ever get over this because of how legitimately upset everyone is. I'm considering finding a new job because it's gotten so bad. Am I the jerk for snitching? Should I have just talked to Tanya privately and not told her boss? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Tanya? Please let us know.
I think boss is the jerk for not firing her. Then again, maybe it added some texture.
Entitled Mom Ruins My Most Prized Possession. A small bit of information about me and some backstory. I'm 14 and have autism. I'm an amateur coin and Hot Wheels collector and enjoy collecting Hot Wheels and coins of small/moderate value. I've got exactly 41 coins that I've collected, ranging in price anywhere from $30 to $400. My crown jewel of this collection is my Flying Eagle penny, Flying Eagle cent, which I have in its own separate coin case as opposed to all of the rest which are in a picture frame. This coin is my prized possession. It's valued at around $1,000 to $1,500 US, so on the low end price point because of its condition. The story starts around December of 2020. My auntie and her 3 kids came over to our rather stuffy trailer as they needed somewhere to stay while passing through our city. Now, I don't like anybody being in my room where my stuff is when I can't see them, but I'm more than happy to let them in when I'm in with them. My little cousin, 8, the same one who broke my original NES, to lightly put it, is a jerk. She's never ever had one day where she wasn't treated like royalty. Now, this behavior would be tolerated if she was 2 years old, but she's 8, so I don't put up with it. She knocks on my door asking to come in, and I agree. From now on, I'll call her Entitled Cousin. Entitled Cousin.
Hey, OP, can I come in?
Me. Yes, thanks for asking. She comes inside the room and sits on my bed, looking at my wall of Hot Wheels. Entitled Cousin.
Those are so cool. Where did you get them?
Me. Oh, I usually just buy them at the Hot Wheels store. They're pretty cheap.
Can I please have one?
Now, I'm a generous person and have some Hot Wheels I play with, so I had gave her one. It was a basic Toyota-looking one.
But I wanted one of those.
Points to the ones in the box on my wall. Me. Sorry, but I don't give those away. She cuts me off.
But you aren't playing with them. They're still in the boxes.
Me. Yes, but I like them in their boxes. I keep them in their boxes because I like them to be displayed.
I want that one.
She points to my Stars and Stripes 64 Pontiac GTO. Me. I'm sorry, but I won't give it away. Now please leave my room. I start nudging her out of my room before closing the door. It was relatively late, around 9:50 p.m. when they arrived, and they had inflated the blow-up mattress we had for them to sleep on, as they would be leaving the next day, so I decided to go to bed, as I had an online class tomorrow at 9 a.m. Cue the next day. I wake up around 7 minutes before my class starts and rush to my laptop, being around 2 minutes late for the class. They usually last an hour or two. 30 minutes of the teacher talking, and another 30 or an hour of work. Everyone in the house was awake at this time. The class period had ended, so I was working on the stuff for the last few days. My mom had told me she was going out with 2 of the 3 kids and that entitled aunt would be here because she didn't want to go, and neither did entitled cousin. I was fine with this. Another hour goes by, and then entitled cousin goes into my room. Me. Hey, entitled cousin. Entitled cousin, looking at my coins.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Now, I'm happy whenever anyone shows interest in my coin collection. Me. Oh, yeah, I collect coins just like my Hot Wheels. Just like the Hot Wheels, look with your eyes, please. Boss music. Entitled aunt walks in.
Oh, why can't she hold them?
Me. They're in a picture frame. Entitled aunt walks close enough to see all of the coins.
Well, this one isn't,
she said while picking up the flying eagle penny. It was in the case. I instantly go on edge. Me. Oh yeah, but I don't like people touching it. Entitled cousin.
Mommy, can I see it?
She holds her arms out like a little toddler. Me, slightly panicked but trying to be nice. Yes, you can. Just please don't open it.
Why can't we open the case?
You obviously don't take good care of them anyway.
Look how dirty they are.
At this point, I'm full on, how do I stop this without escalating it mode. Me. You really shouldn't clean rare coins. It devalues the coin. Entitled aunt starts to open the case.
You're obviously lying, so we won't touch it. Coins are meant to look shiny. Plus, it's just a penny. How can you devalue a cent?
During this whole ordeal, entitled aunt is practically screaming, hence the exclamation marks. I'm almost at my breaking point until I look in horror as she takes it out of its case. Entitled cousin.
Hey, give me.
Entitled aunt hands her the coin. All I remember is failing to hold in my tears as I don't like people touching my stuff. Entitled cousin.
Ew, it's dirty.
Me. Okay, yes, now please give it back. She hands it to entitled aunt and entitled aunt flicks it at me.
Clean your coins.
I've never put a coin in its case faster. At this point, I thought the whole thing was over. I was sorely mistaken, as the penny isn't ruined yet, now is it? Skip a few hours when the whole thing is past us and I'm playing Rust with my friends. Apparently, entitled aunt had come into my room and taken the coin without me knowing. Probably when I was farming for a base in the game. I usually listen to music while farming, so I wouldn't have noticed. A few minutes later, I get up to get a bottle of water to see entitled aunt at the sink. At first, I had thought nothing of it because it looked like she was washing her hands. I headed back into my room after grabbing a bottled water because the tap water here sucks, and go back to my room. 20 minutes later, I go out into the living room where they're watching something on TV. I look at the counter with horror as my prized possession, the eagle penny I valued so much, is sitting in a vinegar bath in a glass. I fish it out of the vinegar and see that they had cleaned the coin and devalued it. What I did next, I regret, but I didn't know how to act. Me. I told you not to touch my stuff. Entitled aunt.
Don't give me that.
I don't let her finish her sentence before screaming back. Me. You touched my crap. I told you not to. You ruined this coin. You don't clean them. Entitled cousin starts to cry.
Yes, you do. Coins are supposed to be shiny. And how did I devalue a penny?
You can't spend them. We are Canadian and we don't have the penny anymore. I couldn't argue any longer. I was crying and couldn't speak. I went to my room with the coin. I felt defeated. Around 10 minutes later, my mom comes back from their 3 to 4 hours out. They had spoiled the cousins and gotten something for entitled cousin. They were Hot Wheels. Entitled aunt brings the situation up first.
Your son needs to learn to respect what I do for him.
Mom, oh, what did he do?
He cursed at me and ran his mouth like a sailor, all because I had cleaned a dirty coin he had.
My mom helped me get all of the coins I have today, especially the eagle penny. We looked for a long time to get a hold of one, and it was the only penny that I had which wasn't clean before I got it. She was livid. I don't really know what happened. What I do know is what entitled aunt had said.
Isn't your son too old to have toys and collect small things like coins? Is he a spastic?
My mom kicked them out and came to check on me, and I showed her the coin. It basically lost half of its value. It wasn't until a few hours later I looked at my Hot Wheels and saw one was missing, the '64 Pontiac GTO. Now I keep my coins at my grandfather's house in the back room. Once a month, me and him go look at them and add to my collection. Now I have 60 coins, but I'll never have one just as special as my Flying Eagle penny was. Have you ever had someone take something that belonged to you? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
You take my sanity from me every day, Reddit boy. Your voice is like nails on a chalkboard.
Karen shows off fancy purchases on Instagram when she owes me money. I'm 50 and work as an engineer. Straight middle management, not too ambitious. Decent salary, nothing spectacular. Have a wife, stay-at-home mom, and one son. We put him through school. Now my wife sells homemade scarves on Etsy. Middle class. We have a small 2-bedroom house we still make payments on. Son, 25, is now a middle school math teacher. My older sister, 54, and her common-law husband, my age, have a 22-year-old daughter who went to school for a degree in music. My sister works at the DMV. Her husband is pensioned from the Coast Guard and now retired. Towards niece last year of school, her parents had financial problems. Sister asked to borrow some money to pay daughter's last year of tuition, several thousands of dollars. I talked it over with my wife, and though we're not rich, we want to help. We knew the unwritten rule. If you loan money to family, pretty much say goodbye to the money. Sister thanked me, took the money, swore she'd pay it back, yada yada yada. That was 2 years ago. Daughter graduated but moved back home, still works at the mall. It's okay, she's young. What isn't okay is my sister and her husband posted photos all over Instagram and Facebook about their European vacation, their new Range Rover, all kinds of random stuff. My wife and I always wanted to go to Europe, and we will when I retire. I was going to let it go, but my sister kept bragging on social media about how she made good investments, her husband is retired and living the life, etc. My sister and I communicate, most conveniently, just on Facebook. Maybe it was passive-aggressive and mean, but under a photo of her and her husband beneath the Eiffel Tower, I posted, "You're so lucky. Wife and me will go there someday after the house is paid and we take care of other debts." Sister private messaged me and accused me of trying to shame her on social media. I replied, "Why? Do you have something to be ashamed of?" I had already written the debt off in my mind, but at the same time, I thought it was tacky for her to wealth flex when she knows she's borrowed $9,000 from her brother who has his own family to worry about. And I didn't even say anything too mean like, "Oh, look, why are you spending money when you owe me money?" or something jerky like that. In fact, many people in our family and mutual friends and acquaintances liked or hearted my comment. So even if I felt kind of petty when posting it, it didn't read like an accusation. Sister still thinks I was being tacky and sent me a text saying so, saying how her daughter hasn't even found a job yet, it's her daughter's debt, etc. Wow. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know.
Hey Reddit boy, do you have $1,000 I can borrow?
Mock me and my work, then ask for directions? Okay. This happened back in the early 1980s, so all dialogue is condensed and paraphrased. I was a 19-year-old. Geek, sickening all-American boy type, male, putting myself through school as a sweeper working for the Mouse in Southern California. We sweepers are in every public area of the park, are the most approached employees for questions, not intimidating like security, swamped like the character actors, or isolated by queues, fences, and walls like the ride operators, restaurant and store personnel, and are generally knowledgeable and friendly. It's very much a customer service position. It was a good gig, and I found the mouse good to work for. My primary work area was centered around the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, which is a major traffic hub in the park. At busy times, most summer days, it was hot, crowded, and by shift end, you were glad it was done and ready to go home. I was late into the last hour of my shift. The crowds had thinned out, not dispersed. That would be hours hence. But the sun was down and the night was pleasant. I was happily cruising about, keeping my area neat. Have pan and broom will travel. When a pair of 30-something males struttingly approached. Let's call them Mocker 1 and Mocker 2. I'm me, Mocker 1.
Hey, sweeper. There's some popcorn spilled up by the haunted mansion. Better go clean it up.
Mocker 2 laughs nastily. That is some hundreds of yards away, in another guy's area. Not only not my problem, but actually, unless some danger was caused by it, I shouldn't go. Me, with a friendly smile and a nod. Thanks, we'll get it. Mocker 1, tossing a cup on the ground. He had walked by at least 4 trash cans between where he was and the haunted mansion.
Here, get this.
With a flourish, I popped it into my pan and broom. Mocker 2, in a sneering voice.
When is the 3 o'clock parade?
This caused Mocker 1 to laugh. Believe it or not, this is a very common question, one that can be heard multiple times daily. Usually it translates to, what is the parade route, and when should I get there to get a good spot? But this was at 8:45 p.m. I was off at 9, so it was just meant to annoy me and to waste my time. Me, cheerfully. The 3 o'clock parade will be at 3 o'clock tomorrow. The pair continued on, in this vein, for another 5 minutes, asking random, generally pointless questions, pointing out the odd cigarette butt, leaf, piece of paper, and generally mocking and sneering at me, my work, and the park. Basically mocking me for their own entertainment and wasting my time. I found it mildly annoying, but had long ago, this was my second summer with the mouse, realized that if 995 out of 1,000 folks are nice and are cheerfully set on having fun, you still get the other 5. And when park attendance ranged from 12,000, very dead, to 55,000, screaming lunacy, that meant that you had 60 to 275 jerks running around on any given day. Knowing that helped me maintain a cheerful perspective. People are, by and large, overwhelmingly nice. Still, as said, it was mildly annoying. It was at this moment that the heavens opened and a choir of angels sang, and Mocker 2 asked the single most common question.
Oh, hey, I gotta go. Where's the bathroom?
Mocker 1 chiming in.
Yeah, where is it?
Now, in a surprisingly Warren-like space behind me, there was a tiny and hard-to-find restroom. I never sent anyone there. It was well hidden. I think dating from park construction, and it was little used. Only guided, urgent cases, personally. Nope, not this time. The next closest was to my ride across Adventureland. Straight walk, can't miss it at the end. 3 minutes, less if moving urgently. Me, with a nod and a cheerful customer service smile, motioning with my hand for them to turn around. Turn around, see that rail? Go to it and follow it to the right. When it ends, there will be a path on the right. At the end of that path is another path on the right. The restroom is there. And they set off. I'm sure that they were quite expressive when they arrived, 2 lands away, halfway across the park, to the tiny elderly restroom in Fantasyland. 10 minutes later, I was off and never saw those 2 again. Jerk move, arguably so, I cannot deny, but I file it under play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and is an example of the lack of wisdom of asking directions from after mocking and belittling a stranger. I can't stand campers. Nice weather and lockdown have made our patio a popular place to eat. One of my tables on the patio was filling up with a pair of older theater professionals, a man and a woman. The woman was ordering off of the gluten-free menu, which just shows which regular menu items can be modified. Lady:
Tell me about the tacos.
Me: They come 3 to a plate with chips and salsa.
Why aren't the shrimp tacos on the gluten-free menu?
Me: Because the shrimp is already breaded.
You don't have any shrimp that's not breaded?
No.
Can I mix and match the tacos?
No.
Tell the chef he's being mean.
What? No. After pulling teeth for a few more minutes, I get an order from her. They eventually get to coffee and dessert, which I went out of my way to rustle up some fruit for the gluten-free lady. Finally, they pay, and I think I will be free of them soon. I was wrong. At 9:30 p.m., 2 hours after they paid and 30 minutes before close, they stopped me on my way to my only other table. Guy.
We will want more drinks, just to warn you.
Me, not sure if he's joking. Haha, okay, what can I get you?
Oh, we're not sure, but we're also having 2 more join us.
Me, still not sure if this guy is joking. Oh, alright. Lady.
You're here all night, right?
Me. Yeah, apparently. As I'm standing there, 2 college-age guys come in through the patio gate, and my 2 campers get up and tightly embrace their former students, all maskless, of course. I managed to get their drink order in by 9:45, 4 specialty cocktails, which my bartender is thrilled to make right before close. I drop off the drinks with a check and inform them that we close in 10 minutes. The 2 young guys finish their drinks right away. The old campers are oblivious and just sit in sippo mode. Nobody is picking up the tab. It's 15 minutes after close, so I start bussing the table of everything other than the drinks still being drank. Bless the young guy in seat 1. He takes it upon himself to pay me for the round of drinks. When I return the young guy's card and thank him for coming out, I hear the old guy start to bluster about the young guy paying the bill. I just walked away, laughing to myself. Look, sir, that check sat there for 25 minutes. You had ample opportunity to pay. At 10:30, my manager went and told them it was time to lock up, and only then they got up and left. Edit. Since some people are mad, I said, haha, yeah, when they asked if I was there all night. I was caught off guard and trying to be polite. This was in a smaller suburb, not a major metropolitan center. The only restaurants that are 24 hours are drive-thrus and Denny's-style diners. Our hours are posted on the front door. I did tell them when they had 10 minutes till close, and they had 40 minutes to drink their drinks before they were asked to leave. Folks, this is a sub for servers to vent. If you don't like it when servers vent, read a different sub. He said I could, so I did. This was back in 2019. I was training to become a level 2 swimming teacher, and the guy who ran the courses, we'll call him Bob, asked me to do him a huge favor and work in Scotland for a month as a lifeguard at one of the holiday resorts. I liked the sound of it, and it's also great for me since I had lost my job about a month prior and could really do with the money. So I go and work there. I do great, amazing experience and fun. They ask me to stay on an extra month. I agree, a little begrudgingly, since I have a swimming teacher job offer waiting for me, but after speaking with them, they're okay to wait the extra month. After a couple of weeks, they hire a new lifeguard. He causes some trouble with me, and I decide that I've had enough and speak to the resort manager about leaving early. Since I wasn't meant to be staying later anyway, and they have new lifeguards now, I figured I could go home. After having a chat with him, he agrees that it's okay. I try to talk to Bob, but he's off on holiday, so I tell his assistant, and she says it should all be fine. So he owes me just over a week of wages, about 120 hours, around 900 pounds. When he comes back from his holiday, he tells me he isn't going to pay it because I walked out on the job. I call the resort manager to see if they have paid him for all of my work there, and they had. I was steaming. I called Bob and basically told him he had to pay me the money I had earned. He just kept saying,
You walked out. I have the upper hand here.
and
You can take me to court, but my lawyer says I will win.
so I thought, court it is. It had to go through tribunal first, so I took this opportunity to gather my evidence. The holiday resort was on my side, so they were happy to sign all my hours off and send them to me. In that time, I realized that I was only asking for wages and holiday pay was mandatory, not optional. I wasn't expecting any kind of holiday pay beforehand, but since Bob wants me to go through all this trouble to get my basic pay, I may as well go full pelt and ask for holiday pay for the whole month and a half I was there. After speaking to a lawyer, once I had the tribunal certificate, they calculated my missing pay and holiday pay to be 1,500 pounds. He paid it all to me the day before our court date. Am I the jerk for teaching kids basic life skills and giving them food? I, 40 female, am currently not working due to an extremely mismanaged labor a little over a year ago that left me unable to stand for extended periods, and I had difficulty walking. As a result, I've been at home a lot more than I usually am. I usually lecture at a local university. My partner and I own a 5-acre section on the outskirts of a town. There are 2 buildings on the property, our 2-bedroom home and an 8-bedroom former B&B that we run as a very cheap rental. More because the rental market here sucks and we wanted to help out than because we need the money. The house is usually mostly rented by teens and young adults who have been placed here by a local council agency that supports young who have mental and physical disabilities or mental health issues. This started a few years back because my partner, a semi-retired professor / researcher / doctor, offered to set up a free counseling program for these kids. They found out about the house and it went from there. Depending on the size of the room, each room rents for 30 to 60 New Zealand dollars per week, including bills, which makes it significantly cheaper than most rentals in the area, about 1/3 to half the usual rent. During lockdown last year, I was struggling to keep the house / garden maintained as well as look after the baby and recover. A couple of the kids here noticed and offered to help out until I was better, and we came to an agreement where essentially they would do the housework / gardening in exchange for free meals that I'd make for them. I quickly realized that they didn't actually know how to do these things after our laundry got flooded twice, etc. So this ended up getting turned into a Life Skills 101 class essentially, where I taught them how to repair clothes, get stains out, clean, etc. And over time also ended up including guidance on how to sit interviews, how to write a CV, how to find a job, play an instrument, cook a variety of meals, etc. I enjoyed it because it made me feel like I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing, and they enjoyed not having to buy their own food. Most of the kids in the house got involved over time. Over Xmas, a couple of them moved out as they had found jobs and wanted to live closer to them. One of the new kids that moved in was a girl with DS. She was very passionate about my garden, so I taught her about all the different types of plants and how to look after them and helped her get a part-time job at a local plant nursery. The problem is that her mother has now come around and gone completely mental at me for trying to replace her, which wasn't my intention at all, and now has me second-guessing the whole situation. Am I the jerk here? Edited to add, as I've had some messages. We don't get to know the kids' personal information unless they tell us themselves. Privacy laws. But generally, they end up with the council agency because their home life is unstable or unsafe, or they are aging out of the foster care system. Most of them are between 15 and 21, and this service is supposed to help them prior to going on a WINS benefit or similar, with the obvious goal of being to get them out of the welfare system. But this isn't always possible. Just to be clear, it isn't always the parents' fault here. From what I've seen, it's more often that the kids aren't coping with their home life and are lashing out at those around them, making it unsafe to stay with their families. And to everyone messaging me to ask why my partner wasn't helping me, he was. He's great, don't worry. Unfortunately, due to the situation last year, our local GP clinic has many doctors relocated to the local hospital to cover staffing issues, so my partner volunteered at the clinic so the locals could still be seen. Family cut me off financially, want me home this weekend. I said they'll have to pay me. I'm a student. My parents set aside some money yonks ago, so when I went off to university, I could afford to go just about anywhere. This wasn't a tuition thing as we're in the UK, so I was always going through Student Finance England (SFE) for that. But some areas of the country are way more expensive than others due to the cost of living, as it gets higher around the best unis. I got into a uni with a very high cost of living. My parents were giving me the money meant for me in installments, just like SFE does. I got a part-time job to top it up. Then I got pregnant. I figured I could keep the baby, provided I didn't suddenly lose any income. My parents then decided to stop giving me the money they set aside for me, saying it was for my education only. I then went over my options again and realized I would have to go full-time to just make ends meet, which I did, but I had to make a lot of compromises to make it work. It's been like this for about a year. I gave birth late last August, making my daughter just over 7 months old. Myself, my parents, and my sister have all had our first jabs, and Nan has had both. Dad's birthday is this Friday, and Nan's is on Tuesday, so my parents want me and my sister to drive to Nan's house this weekend to celebrate both events. I've said I can't afford it. It's a 6-hour drive each way, so I'll miss at least one, most likely 2 days of work. My parents asked me to rearrange what I could, pointing out that I should get money from SFE next month. It actually came a week ago, so I can afford to miss work for a couple of days. They said that as they haven't met the baby yet, and we've not seen each other in over a year, they want to see us now. I said if they want to see us, they can pay me, as I can't afford to lose any wages now that they've cut me off. They said that's incredibly unfair of me, and they can't believe I'd try and guilt trip them over what they did with their money. I offered to FaceTime my sister, who could put me on with Mom, Dad, and Nan if I had time, but they said me mentioning time constraints was further guilt-tripping and I shouldn't expect them to pay for my presence, that I was being tactless and selfish, and that if I attend, they don't want to hear about money. I told them that they've created this situation, and if they're seriously shocked that I can't afford to take a cross-country trip with 2 days' notice, then they have no clue what the real world is like for someone who is a full-time student, a full-time worker, and a single mother. So I now have an appearance fee. My sister's boyfriend also got his SFE loan early, like I did, so she said that I already have the money from SFE and that me wanting an appearance fee is greedy and entitled, bordering extortion, and that I'm trying to make our parents feel guilty about money I have no right to. Am I the jerk? Info. For people suggesting they visit me, I have a 1-bedroom in a not super touristy town. Nan's house is a 5-bedroom, 2.5 bath, less than 2 minutes walking from the beach down south. The idea behind suggesting Nan's house was that we could all head down on Friday or Saturday, stay over, then head back Sunday. Karen demands I buy her partner a birthday present. I, 26, female, have a group of 6 friends whom I've known since high school. For the last 12 years, we've given each other group gifts for our birthdays with a budget of around $20. We've maintained this budget all this time. Last year, one of my friends, Alice, got a girlfriend, Leia. I've only met her twice, but I'll admit that I don't like her. We just don't click. Despite this, I've always tried to be nice and welcoming to her. Last month, I suddenly got added to a group chat to discuss what we were going to buy Leia for her birthday. And this bothered me because A, no one had asked me if I wanted to participate or not in the present, and B, we've never given any of our partners any kind of present. I guess they've all become good friends during this past year. But to avoid drama, I decided to just shut up and give the $3 that it was going to cost me. Just not worth any argument. My friends asked Alice what kind of present would Leia like, and she said, I don't know what our budget is, but she would love to have this book. Then proceeded to show us a $60 book. This angered me quite a bit. For 12 years, our budget has been $20, and suddenly, you don't know if a $60 book exceeds the budget? She said that, if that's too much, I can pay a bit more to compensate. But I know her, and she's always been quite stingy, even though money is not a problem for her or her family. It was obvious that she wanted to buy that book for Leia, but she didn't want to expend the money herself and wanted to trick us into buying it for her. I said that I was okay with buying the book, as long as we paid $20 and she paid the other $40, because it was just not fair for the rest of us who had a $20 gift. A few of my friends agreed with me. She then said that, well, we can always choose another gift, and proceeded to suggest a few other things, all in the $20 budget. So it was obvious that she wasn't going to put more money to buy the book. A few days later, she suggested buying the book again, this time saying that she really didn't have much money at the moment, but that Leia would love it so much, she deserved to have it, etc. That she will make an effort and pay for it and all of that. My friends pitied her and decided that we should buy it and that we will share the expenses, that it was not fair for her to pay more. I said that what was not fair was to expend so much money on a present, especially when none of our partners have ever gotten a present. They all said that they didn't mind, and I answered that in that case, I wasn't going to participate in the present. I left the group chat and didn't want to know anything else about it. A few of my friends told me that I was insensitive and too harsh, and that I was doing this because I don't like Leia, which is true, I don't like her. But in this case, I feel like I was just trying to be fair, and if the budget would have been $20, I would not have said anything. So, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friends? Please let us know.
Might be time to find some new friends, OP. Never understood how friends can feel entitled to your money.
Don't want to let me train a replacement before I leave? Okay. I used to work as the dedicated inventory guy for a tire and wheel store that dealt in only that. Big chain. All the guys wear black, not by choice, even on the most blistering of days. Nearly 10 years working there, and I was the only one handling their 5,000 to 7,500 tires, along with several hundreds wheels, nuts, bolts, tire lube, replacement parts. Basically, I organized the entire store in terms of what was bought, sold, and used. I received most shipments, whether a single tire by FedEx, or our 2 times a week shipment of 400 to 800 units. Not something I knew for a long time, but my technical job was listed as a 3-person rotating task. I did it all myself. The manager I worked with for most of those 10 years was very happy and supportive of me, trying to make sure I was taken care of if I needed help. Unfortunately, the company underwent plenty of changes after the owner of the whole chain passed. It shifted from a family thing to a profit and micromanagement thing. My great manager was stressed and went from great to not so great. I won't deny I got pretty upset with a few things from him, but it was just the situation didn't favor him. Ultimately, he was transferred to an administrative position to finish out till retirement, and we got a new manager and lots of extra salary salesmen. I was left on inventory as everyone confirmed I was the only guy for the job that knew anything. They tried giving me newbies to learn the ropes, but I only got a couple days with them before they were pulled for more important things. Eventually, they gave up caring and figured I would do inventory for the foreseeable future. Well, the end of 2018 came with me looking for other opportunities. It wasn't entirely because of the shift at work, but doing a 3-person job after 10 years was starting to take its toll on my back. I started about 20 and was getting close to 30. I can't deny I was getting kind of scared I would do something irreparable to my back that would stick with me forever. They pulled equipment I needed to do better without straining myself more, made the process of pulling inventory more bureaucratic and lengthy without need for it, and would keep trying to limit my time doing things but expect the same results. They also kept resisting my plans to reorganize stock because brands don't always need the same amount of space. That major brand did really well there 3 years ago, and taking up 1,000 tires worth of space only takes up 400 now. But hey, I have this brand that did an overhaul, and we used to carry barely 250 for them. Now, we are ordering hundreds of them weekly with a need for 750 units of space. So there's stock unable to fit in one place, but a huge gap in another I can fill. I'm sure some of you can understand. You don't just start shoving items from the wrong brand into a gap because there's space there, use it. As I'm in the final weeks of my lovely tenure there, I've been training for the new job for about 6 weeks. They had plenty of warning to replace my position. I reminded them they should find someone I can give the rundown to before it's too late. My new management, as well as 2 salesmen I never liked, tell me in very businessy and polite terms, just do your job and let us worry about it. I tried to be nice about it because while I don't get on well with the salesmen, except one, he was always great, and I love my fellow service techs in the back getting dirty on every car, though the heat of summer and getting our legs turned almost blue when working in the freezing snow and slush of the winter. I then realized that it really is their problem, not mine. Cue the malicious compliance. I found a lovely time when all 3 of my most concerning resistors were away. 2 were on meetings with corporate for 2 to 3 days. 1 was on vacation for the rest of the week. This was great as it was my last week as well. I hauled all kinds of stuff that week. I reorganized the whole place to my OCD specs. I wanted everything to fit. I wanted everything perfectly presentable. I did it my way and got everything in. To note, some years, especially in peak winter with lots coming in, we got so overstocked we couldn't fit everything all at once, which was also because of them not letting me deal with it efficiently. I took care of that overstock and fit it all in. Brands were moved and notes left. I let all my favorite coworkers who pulled my inventory the most know what's up. They adapted instantly because it's really not that hard. Just remember the salt is in the pantry now, not next to the stove. I was commended on my effort and thanked for doing that before leaving. However, I knew what was coming. No, not from the guys who didn't want my organization methods. By not replacing me, or at least covering what I've been doing for 10 years, well, imagine it like giving someone a nice, clean, and well-working car that they never maintain because it was always taken care of. Yeah, I started my new job and got paid almost double. A couple months in, and I start getting calls from former coworkers. Apparently, they never really tried to replace me at all. Things fell apart. Tires were shoved into the racks with no regard for where they belonged. If there was space, fill it. After 3 months, I heard 3 longtime employees walked out because the lack of organization was destroying their bay times for dealing with cars, leading to a domino fall of stressful work environment stuff. It took an average of 15 minutes at our store to deal with most things on one car. However, I was told it was taking that long just to find the units needed after pulling the car in. Heck, Sometimes they gave up and tried to huff it to another nearby store to find their tires, thinking they had an inventory error. Obviously, that level of delay and inefficiency made the managers angry at those they blamed. Service techs usually got the heat. I wish I could say there was more juicy details about the aftermath, but at a certain point, all my ears in that store fell. I feel like that's enough said in and of itself. One bit that came about the 4 or 5 months mark after I left though, one of the managers called me on my personal phone. They asked how I was doing and wondered if my new job was working out. I was very happy and energetically told them how great I felt in my new job. He inquired whether I might be interested in helping out at the store again. I declined. Now, I'm not the best at reading people, but this person seemed so lost in their tone that I can only guess they had so little luck in finding another replacement for what I did. I'm far more appreciated now in my new job. The thing that made me feel a little bad, but also goodish, is that my former coworkers agreed that when I left was when things started to get terrible. It probably didn't hurt that I was the insatiable goof of the store too, who told so many bad puns. Have you ever felt unappreciated at your job? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I feel unappreciated every day. This channel should be named Miss Karen.
Am I the jerk for not changing my baby's name again? All names are fake. I have a 9-year-old daughter and another on the way. I had 2 grandmothers, Annie and Rose. I named my oldest Annabelle after Nanny Annie, whose full name was also Annabelle. I did not name her after Nana Rose, as at the time she was born, Nana Rose was still with us. When I found out I was pregnant with a second, I decided to name her after Nana Rose, who passed in 2017. My sister, Lucy, got pregnant about 5 months before me. She says that she wants to name her baby Rose after Nana Rose. I say our kids can share the name. She says I already have Annabelle, and I could have named her Annabelle Rose or something, but passed up the chance, so I can't also have Rose. I figure this is not the hill to die on, so I say I'll look for something else, but reserve the right to use Rose. I then crack open a baby book, and a few entries after Rose is Rosalie. It's perfect, honors Nana Rose, doesn't upset Lucy, and my boyfriend loves it. Lucy finds out the new name and says it's lovely and she approves, which annoys me, but I say nothing. This all takes place in the 8th month of her pregnancy, 3rd month of mine, so I don't even know the gender yet, and this is all hypothetical. A couple of weeks later, Lucy gives birth. A few days ago, about a month after birth, she announces that her daughter's name is Rosalie. At this point, I'm really annoyed because I went to great lengths to leave the name Rose available, and she's nicked my choice. Mom calls me to say she knew what Lucy was planning and she hopes I'm not upset, because this means I can now name my incoming daughter Rose, except I'm now attached to Rosalie. I tell Mom that I'm sticking with Rosalie. She says Lucy has Rosalie. I say there's going to be 2 Rosalies in the family. She says this is impractical, as both Rosalies will have the same surname. Sister is a single mom, boyfriend is taking my name, and they will likely be in the same school and year group, so this will cause all manner of issues. I say if it's going to be an issue, then I'll deal with it if and when it comes up. Lucy then calls me, calling me an inconsiderate jerk, and says I'm being petty, that I don't have a monopoly on the name, and that she can name her kid what she likes. I said that's all true, so by that same logic, I can use Rosalie. She says there can't be 2 Rosalies, as it'll cause problems, and I say she's the one who has a problem with it, so she can change her kid's name or can deal with it. She again called me an inconsiderate, spiteful jerk and hung up. Mom, Dad, and brother all side with Lucy. Am I the jerk? Edit. I appreciate the alternate name suggestions that stem from Rose, and I do find reading them interesting. But I did say that all names are fake, so, in the nicest way possible, Rose-inspired names aren't really helping me. Also, it has been confirmed I'm having a girl. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I wish that OP had never given in to her sister's demands in the first place. You give a Karen an inch, they'll take a mile.
Make a mess of my car? Get messy yourself. I was on my way home after a very long day working at the hospital. As much as I would have rather just kept driving, the gas light blazing away on my dash told me to stop being lazy and just fill the tank. After hopping off the highway, I head for the small station I frequently use. It only has 2 pumps, both sides, so 4 spots. Even though it has great prices, I rarely have to wait more than a car or two for an open spot. Other than the station, the road is pretty much empty nearby. The station was on my side of the road, so I turned on my right-hand directional. As I begin to turn the wheel into the station, this lunatic in a Mercedes comes from the other direction, sliced through the out lane and inches across my front bumper to beat me into the parking lot. I slammed on my brakes, sending my gym bag and a stack of folders shooting off the passenger seat into jumbled messes on the floor. I'm not a big swear, but that had me sounding like a sailor. As I pulled in, I noticed a police car in a parking spot outside the building that houses the cashier and the tiny convenience store. My hopes rose as I prayed the officer saw the crazy lady's stunt and I was about to witness instant karma. No such luck. She pulled to one side of the pumps. I pulled to the other. I got out, swiped my card, and started the gas flowing. Then, clear as a bell, I hear the snottiest sounding voice issuing from the Mercedes.
This is unbelievable. I was clearly here first, but this idiot is filling up the other car first. No, he hasn't even started me yet. I swear these people are stupid out here. Hold on, Shelley. I have to deal with this moron, or I will be here all day.
Now the dreaded
Excuse me
is aimed right at me.
You know you don't need to wait for the tank to be full before you start another car. Now come here and take this,
She said, waggling a credit card at me.
If I'm late because of you, I will be calling your boss. And just so you know, it is very rude to service customers out of order. I was here ahead of that guy.
I looked down, and sure enough, she has a New Jersey license plate. In New Jersey, you don't pump your own gas. An attendant does it for you. My state may have a few full-service stations left, but honestly, I haven't seen one in ages. Here, you pump for yourself. If she had gotten out of the car, she would have seen I was that guy, but the pump blocked her line of sight. I considered an "I don't work here, lady" style response, but the primped-up entitled expression on this self-absorbent jerk required more from me. She stared harder at me, raising her brows, and waggled her card even more emphatically. Before I knew what to do, I let go of my pump, stepped closer, and took the card from her manicured fingers. As she sneered at me, I looked her right in the eyes and snapped my hand downward, flicking her card straight into the trash barrel besides the pump. Someone must have thrown a slushie or milkshake in there, because the card made an awesome splat sound when it hit the bottom. The harpy shrill screech that ensued made the thought of sorting out all of the files on the floor of my car almost worth it. It could have stopped there, and I would have happily driven away with my half-full tank, but it was not over yet. She was screaming at me as I turned away, broiling out the Mercedes in her designer outfit, completely losing her mind. That was when the officer came dashing out of the store.
Excuse me, miss. Are you alright? What's going on here?
This man assaulted me and stole my card. He threw it in there,
she says, pointing a 3-inch long nail at the barrel.
Is that correct, sir?
Barely. She insisted, and I mean insisted, I take her card. Since I am under no obligation to provide her service with a card, nor did I want it, I disposed of it in the most expedient manner available to me. I replied, gesturing at the wonderful trash receptacle myself.
That was a pretty petty thing to do. I think you should get it for her,
the officer decreed. The New Jersey jerk was beaming with smug malice at that. I will, under one condition. You detain us both, then go look at the store's parking lot camera. Once you see how we enter the lot, you can decide who goes dumpster diving. He raised a brow at me, but says, fine. He takes our licenses and tells us both to wait there. She's a bit perplexed at first, but her natural entitlement must have convinced her she has to be in the right. It's not long before she began to hiss a handful of pretty vile threats at me. I ignored her and finished filling my tank. My passive smiling confidence must have unnerved her eventually. She crept back into the driver's seat and began talking about lawyers with Shelley. About 20 minutes later, the officer returned. He handed me back my license and told me that I was free to go. Before New Jersey can get a word out, he very sternly rounds on her and said, "Registration, ma'am." That made cleaning up her mess totally worth it. Am I the jerk for cutting my wife off from assets? Technically, my wife and I are still married. We've been separated for almost a year, but neither of us has filed for divorce yet. Last spring, when lockdown first got bad, both of my adult kids lost their jobs and couldn't make rent, so I offered for them to stay with us until they got back on their feet. This caused a lot of stress for everyone involved. I work 45 to 50 hours a week in a manufacturing job while my wife has not worked in nearly a decade. This was completely her choice, as she has never liked working. Who does? And she wanted to pursue making income on Etsy and other similar sites. So when my son and daughter came to stay with us, our house became much more crowded than usual. Since my wife stays at home all day, she felt that my kids were invading her space and wanted them out pretty much immediately. She felt I was enabling them by letting them come stay with us and that we should let them sink or swim on their own. I told her that I couldn't let my kids suffer when I was in a position to help. After only a few weeks, crap hits the fan. My wife had blown up at both my son and daughter because she felt they weren't pulling their weight in our house. She started giving them chore lists and would get angry when all of the things weren't done. My kids were both looking for work, and dealing with unemployment offices and doing housework took a back seat to those things, rightfully so in my mind. I came home from work one day to find my wife screaming like a banshee at my son. When I walked in, my wife immediately turned her ire to me and told me that if I didn't kick my kids out right away, then she was leaving. So I told her my kids were staying, and she packed her stuff and called her sister to pick her up. Wife also doesn't drive. Since then, we have barely spoken. She won't answer my calls and will respond to pretty much every text with,
"Unless your kids are gone, we have nothing to talk about."
Mind you, my daughter moved out during the winter after finding a new job, and my son has been working part-time for 6 months while looking for full-time work and saving money to move out. My wife didn't even tell me when her dad passed earlier this year. I had to find out on Facebook. When I tried to call her, she wouldn't answer and ignored all of my texts too. Since it has become painfully obvious to me that this relationship is over, I decided to finally file for divorce. However, as soon as my wife was served the papers, she flipped out on me. She's upset that I cut off her access to our shared checking account and was upset that she will no longer have access to health insurance through my employer. She's called me a jerk more times than I can count, and her siblings have joined the choir on that refrain now too. I do feel bad that this is going to make her life more difficult, but I no longer feel it's my obligation to provide for her when she clearly wants nothing to do with me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
And that is why you never marry a Karen.
I'm sorry you're lonely, but we shouldn't have to suffer for it. It's Christmas Eve, and I work at a small family-owned Italian restaurant in a small city. We close at 4:30 to allow everyone time to be home with their families because most of us have kids, and the boss man is good about stuff like that. Cue the lonely odd regular. She's not a mean lady, but she's certainly different. I've had to ask her to put her shoes back on several times. She regularly told me about her bowel movements, that kind of regular. She comes in around 3. Now I know she always stays a while, but I don't think anything of it as we don't close for another hour and a half. At 4, I drop off her check and start my cleanup as she and one other table are left and I'm not seating anymore. 4:15, second table leaves, wishes me a Merry Christmas and leaves me a banging tip, so I'm in great spirits. 4:30, I'm already pretty much done with my cleaning, lady is done with her food, and I have all her dishes but her teacup. I tell the back it's no biggie if they bounce, there's only one dish. Now it's only me, the closing manager, and my husband, who happens to be the GM. I check on her and drop a subtle, "Man, can't wait to get home. It's been crazy busy. I'm dead on my feet." She laughs and excuses herself to the bathroom. 4:45, she's still in there. I'm getting a little stir-crazy, but it's not bad yet. Me and the guys are just messing around in the back. 4:50, she emerges. Instead of getting ready to leave, she settles in and starts sipping her tea and reading her book. Now I'm getting mad. I go to her table and check the bill. Nothing. I gently remind her that we closed 20 minutes ago, and she scoffs at me as if I'm rushing her. 5. Hubby is upset at this point and shuts off the music and dims the lights. I go to her table again, and she's visibly angry. Here's how the conversation went. We've got me, we've got hubby, and we've got Karen. Karen:
"Excuse me? I wasn't ready to leave yet.
I don't understand why you guys are closing up."
Me: I'm sorry, ma'am, but you've been here for 2 hours. You finished eating over an hour ago, and we've been closed for half an hour. Most of our staff is gone, and the rest would like to get home to our families. I apologize, but we are officially closed and would appreciate if you settled your tab.
This is your job. You're required to stay open until I am ready to leave. I don't care about your stupid family and your plans. What about people like me who don't have anywhere to go?"
Me: I'm sorry about that, There are other places open though if you'd like.
I want to stay here.
She's irate now. My husband hears the screaming and rounds the corner, placing himself in between me and the woman who's now screaming and stomping her foot like a petulant child. Hubby, pay your bill and leave now.
Who the heck do you think you are? I'm the darn customer, and I can stay as long as I like.
Hubby, I'm management, and I'm telling you to leave. Go now!
This is BS. I'm in here several times a week, and I've never been kicked out. I'll never come back again.
She slams her money down on the table and gets right in my husband's face.
I'll have your job for this jerk, and that stupid jerk behind you too.
At this point, I'm floored. She's never behaved like this before. She was always off though, so I wasn't totally shocked. I get the holidays can be rough for some, but don't try to ruin mine as well. Hubby, in a shockingly calm voice. After your behavior today, we don't want you back. Gather your things and exit the restaurant before I call the cops. You're no longer welcome in this establishment. She stood there, her mouth hanging open for a solid 30 seconds before she finally understood.
You can't do that. I know the owner personally.
She didn't.
I'm gonna have both of you jerks fired. This is unacceptable.
I had went to my area and grabbed my phone. I make sure I'm close enough for her to hear. Me. Yes, this is the non-emergency police line, yes? I need a patron removed from our restaurant. No, there's no physical threat, but she's refusing to leave. Karen.
Forget this. I'm leaving. Just you wait. I'll have your jobs.
She proceeds to storm out, accidentally knocking her teacup over with her purse as she leaves. We didn't get home until 6 p.m., but we managed to have a lovely evening. I felt somewhat bad for her because she was alone, but I was happy I'd never have to see her or her nasty toes. That's a whole different story. Again. Am I the jerk for refusing to eat my cousin's cooking after she once tricked me into eating a food she knows I don't like? So, the backstory here is that I don't like cottage cheese. It's not a big deal. I'm not one of those people who always goes on about foods they don't like or hates on others for liking it or anything, but I just happen to not like cottage cheese. This is general knowledge within our family. They're all crazy about cottage cheese, and I always have to remind them to please not serve me any. On this occasion, my cousin wanted to make dinner for everyone at a family gathering. She said she had a new recipe for lasagna that she wanted to try out. While she was cooking, I asked her if she needed any help in the kitchen. She said that she didn't want my help or for me to be in the kitchen at all because the recipe was a family secret from her husband's side of the family. I did notice that she let our other cousin help out despite saying this, but I didn't really think anything of it at the time. So she makes her lasagna, we eat it, and after dinner, she asks me specifically how I had liked the lasagna. I said it was delicious. She got this smug look on her face and shouted,
Ha! It had cottage cheese in it, and you ate it!
I was confused and asked her what she was talking about. She said that she had subbed out the ricotta cheese for cottage cheese and that I hadn't even noticed. I now start thinking about how she kicked me out of the kitchen and asked if that was why she wouldn't let me help in the kitchen, and she said,
Yes, I know you don't like cottage cheese, and I wanted you to eat some, so I didn't want you to know what was in the lasagna.
I told her that that was really rude and crappy, and that she basically lied to me about what was in my food. She said it didn't matter what was in it because I liked it. I said that I would have still tried it even if I had known there was cottage cheese. It's a common thing to put in lasagna instead of ricotta, and it's just that I don't like eating cottage cheese straight up by itself. It's fine as an ingredient, so it was extra crappy to lie. She just doubled down that it was funny that she got me to eat cottage cheese and that I liked it. So that was several years ago. Since then, whenever there's a potluck or we get together for holidays or whatever, I won't touch anything that cousin made. I just don't trust her anymore. I'll never know if she put something random in the food to mess with me or as a joke. And honestly, I'm still just generally upset on principle that she tricked me in the first place. Yes, even if the lasagna was good. She recently called me out on this and said I'm being a jerk about it now because the lasagna incident was years ago. Am I the jerk? Edit. I don't make a big deal or say anything about not taking her food, just that I don't serve myself anything that I see her bring to the party. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her cousin? Please let us know.
I don't blame you one bit. Tricking people about what's in their food is never funny and can even be very dangerous.
No, Karen, I won't let you take my steak. So last year was my mom's 60th birthday. With lockdown, we couldn't do a big party, but instead I did a socially distanced meal for her, my dad, and me. She wanted a steak dinner with all the trimmings. I went down to the supermarket a few days beforehand. Said supermarket has these specialty cut steaks in vacuum packs and a deal of 3 for £10. I was choosing steaks and noticed a woman close by doing the same and picking up several. I took my 3, put them in the trolley, and moved on. I moved on, got the remainder of my list, even thought of getting wine. I moved away from my trolley while choosing. When I turned back, that customer from before was leaning over my trolley. Me. Hi, this is my trolley. Her.
Oh, I know. I'm just taking one of your steaks.
Me. Why? I chose those. You were over there too. I saw you pick some up.
Right, but I got 14 and I need one more.
Me. I have 3. You're not taking one of mine. I deliberately pulled my trolley away from her at this point. Her.
You have to. I need it for the multi-deal.
Me. And I need it to feed 3 people. No. Her. Red in the face by now.
I'll go get a manager then.
Go ahead. She runs off and I finish choosing my wine. 5 minutes later, I'm waiting to get checked out when the lady comes over with the manager. She stood back with this smug look I could see through her mask while the manager came over. Manager. Ma'am, this lady says you stole one of her steaks. Is that true? Me. No, I picked up 3 at the freezer and later on found her leaning over my trolley and saying she was going to take one. She said she needs it for the multi-deal. The manager sighed. I knew it. She does this. I'm sorry to trouble you. Enjoy your day. Me. You too. Good luck with her. The manager sighed again and walked away. As I checked out, I saw him guiding her away from the till points. A few minutes later, I heard a "Security to the meat aisle" announcement as I was leaving. The steaks were lovely, but not worth stealing from someone else's trolley. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.